Recording in progress. Recording in progress.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. I call this meeting to order, and we will now receive public comment, if any, on the 4 closed session items. There's no one present live. Do we have anyone in the Zoom audience?
We have none.
Okay, with that, we will were we recessing or adjourning? We are recessing to closed session. We'll recess to closed session. Okay, welcome everybody to this Wednesday, May 10, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees at the Sequoia Union High School District. We are currently on number 3, reconvening to public session. Welcome and explanation to audience. So the board opened the meeting at 3 p.m. We then recessed to closed session. We met on the closed session items. Now we're returning to open session. I know we have a number of people here to make comments, and we'll go over the protocols for comments when we get to that item. So we could at this time do the roll call.
Student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez.
Here.
Student trustee Swaminathan.
Here.
Trustee Nori, absent. Trustee Ku.
Here.
Trustee Dubois. Vice President Stevenson.
Here.
President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The next item is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any comments about the agenda?
Just the moving of the board comments, I think, to the end of the meeting, because we have a lot of guests.
Okay, so as I understand it, you're suggesting that we take item number 9 and move it to be after item number 16.
Yes. If that's okay with everybody else.
That's fine with me. Shawnice? Amy?
Well, I have a lot.
Just
I had a lot to share, and sometimes we take a while, and so I just worry about having guests.
No, I
Sure.
meant like, can we move it to just after the public comment instead of before, or?
I prefer the end, but I'm open to what you guys think.
Shawnice, do you have an opinion?
Yeah.
There's a lot of staff and outside presenters as well, so I support moving it to the end.
Okay.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, which is to move number 9 to be after number 16.4, but
Thank you for that.
motion to approve? Okay, Carrie moved. A second? Johnny second. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is report out on closed session, and I do have a report out that during the closed session, by a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 2022-2023-17. And by a vote of 5 board members in favor, 0 against, the Board of Trustees approved the settlement agreement for case number 22-2023-18. That concludes the report out on closed session. The next item is approval of the consent agenda. These are items that we vote on a roll call vote and cannot discuss unless we pull individual items from the agenda. Then we can discuss and take action on those individual items separately. Do we have any public comment about the consent agenda? Okay, no. Do we have any board member requests to pull any items from the consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we have a first from Amy, a second from Shawnice. So now we do a roll call vote on the consent agenda.
student trustee Rodriguez Velasquez.
Yes.
Student trustee Swaminathan.
Yes.
Trustee Ku.
Yes.
Trustee Dubois.
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson.
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
okay. The next item is special recognitions.
Yes, thank you. So tonight, the Board of Trustees and I would like to recognize Sequoia High School's Art Bias Internship Program. I'd like to introduce Sequoia High School Principal Priest. I almost said President Priest. That's not in your future? No, okay. To give us more details about these fabulous students and fabulous advisors. So Principal Priest.
More fun if you could see everybody I'm talking about. So it fills me with joy to be here tonight to recognize the Art Bias Internship Program, which kicked off this year. Art Bias pairs 6 Sequoia students with 6 local artist mentors. And together they have created a supportive, professional, artistic community for students who are the first in their family to go to college and who otherwise might not have had access to high quality art enrichment outside of their school curriculum. The 6 students we're recognizing tonight, along with the mentors and the organizers of this program, were discovered as raw, impressive talents in their beginning Sequoia art classes. They were nominated by their teachers and selected to represent our school and community out of a pool of many talented candidates. Our goals are to give students hands-on enrichment that keeps their learning meaningful, relevant, and fun, and to give them equal access and community connections in their chosen career path in the arts. We also want to encourage them so that they continue to bravely pursue art outside and inside of school as not only future IB art students, but also artists in their community and creative voices in their community. Despite terrible weather and recent flooding of the lower floor of the Art Bias building, this program kicked off in January with a reception that included local community partners and supporters of the project, including San Carlos Mayor Adam Rack, our Sequoia High School art teachers, representatives from the San Mateo County Office of the Arts and Culture. These contributors helped make this project possible. And they were also included representatives from the Redwood City Arts Commission and Dragonfly Community Arts. During the first quarter of this program, the 6 students learned to use all kinds of new materials they'd never used before. These included Chinese calligraphy brushes, sumi ink, rice paper. They worked on still life art, learning perspective, measuring proportion, drawing the human figure. They practiced mixing colors, working on a collaborative painting to promote social interaction. And every few weeks, they visited another art studio at the Art Bias location to hear perspectives from working artists on their studio practice, as well as career practicalities like how they maintain a professional presence using website and social media. In addition to hands-on art making and weekly studio visits, the mentors and students go on local art field trips to connect with local art and artists in the community, such as the Racial Equity Mural by Rachel Wolf Goldsmith on the Jefferson Avenue underpass, the Redwood City Art Kiosk downtown, and CZI's art exhibit, Environments of Emergence, Influences and Inspiration. The program will culminate in December of next year, in December of each of the next 2 years, with student-curated art exhibitions where we'll get to see these students' work. To me, this is the kind of exciting real-world partnership Sequoia believes will inspire students to make connections between school, community, and the dreams they have for their future. It's about relevance. It's about keeping schools relevant in students' lives and connecting them with the community. We believe this is the future of education, and we're so proud of these pioneering young students and communities leaders for making this happen. Thank you and congratulations. And I think there was just a couple of folks. So let me introduce one of the organizers of the program. This is Tara Fuller. She works in the Art Bias studio. Tara, take it away.
Thank you so much. So I wanted to recognize all of the parties who have come together in this project to introduce these promising and talented youth to the vibrant and diverse creative community all around us right here in Redwood City. These parties, a nonprofit arts organization, a school, a handful of artist mentors, funders, teachers, and the real stars, the youth. They're working hard to build a creative community. It doesn't just happen. This requires a lot of dedication and effort. I want to thank not only all of the parties that I just mentioned, but I also especially want to thank the youth. They not only applied to participate in this program, they then said yes to the opportunity, and they are now following through every week to put all of their efforts and energy and focus into their projects at Art Bias. So this is a real honor for us, and it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
And I'd like to also recognize our adults. You already met, there you are, okay? And I'd like to say just a few words about our staff who helped organize. Mr. Tapachino, as he is, an art teacher, helped with students, helped with organizing, and Crystal Waters, our art here, organizing ball, and then none of this happens without at least being your peers, supporting high school volunteer coordinators. The project and did a lot of it. Big crowd here. Did we decide whether we're gonna smile or not? What did we decide? We're gonna smile or not?
Okay, the next item on our agenda is number 10, student trustee comments.
Hello, everyone. I just want to give some updates from the SAC meeting yesterday. So yesterday we discussed equity and care for our BIPOC students. Are we listening? And more importantly, are we learning and growing as a district? It's disheartening to see that we can still fall short in protecting all our students. Also, Bonnie came by to talk to the students about the LCAP goals and kind of get their opinions and thoughts, which was really nice. And an update from Sam and I about the student trustee applications. Those are coming in, so we're very excited, but still apply, people, come on. We're very excited to see how that progresses. Short and sweet.
Yeah, we did. It was very sad and exciting to have our last SAC meeting, reminding us that we're moving on. But our members made it such a great year, especially our very lovely, consistent ones. Recently, I know a couple of our schools have had decision days, May 2nd, May 3rd-ish. And I'm so proud of our seniors this year, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how everyone is in the future. And I was part of the planning committee for the middle college decision day. And that was a lot of fun. We had President Lopez spoke and Dean Reed also spoke from Kenyatta College. and they gave out Dean's List awards. So that was really nice. And we also played a really intense game of Jeopardy. It was great. The teachers took part in as well. And we also did like a marshmallow architecture challenge. That was also interesting and really messy. Cleanup was interesting, but like Avantika said, we went over LCAP goals and kind of just looked at the slideshow to see what revisions were like. And that was the first time we've done that this year. I remember we did it last year too. But on another note, looking back on this year from my present self has me a little disappointed. With a very brief understanding of what happened at MA last week, provided by our MA SAC members, some firsthand accounts too. I can't help but feel a profound sense of failure. I've sat in this position for almost a year now, and yet there was nothing we or I could do to at least cover the targets on the backs of our BIPOC students. Looking to the adults in the district that far exceed my years, stationary in their positions, I see their failure too. The district has failed to protect our students from the socio-emotional and political capital of prejudice on its own very campus. SUHSD is not responsible for every single reparation, but it is certainly responsible as an employer and legal local parentis to de-escalate. As MA's BSU leaders so courageously outlined for our community, de-escalation was a part of the solution. As we discussed in our SAC meeting yesterday, there are things students and the larger community cannot know, we understand, but we witnessed the reaction and the response of the district. I urge the board, especially with the current equity training efforts, that de-escalation be prioritized, because as much as our students deserve an education, they deserve justice. Equally, there must be more space for the student voice, not just on one campus or for 10 minutes in this very room facilitated by half-listening ears. We've encouraged the SAC to talk about this at their respective school sites and form a consciousness among our student body. I hope administrators consider a similar approach. MA's BSU deserves time and space with the board and in the community, as do all of our students. We live in an era of televised and globalized brutality, and with my whole heart, I wish SUHSD not to subscribe to it or feign ignorance. With the time we have left, Avantika and I will continue to connect with the community and listen to our students to understand what they need. Thank you.
Okay, next item is comments from the Sequoia District Teachers Association.
It is a quirk of the agenda this evening that I believe I'll be a little island of celebration amid some real soul searching that our district is needing to do. I stand here before you today on May 10th, which is identified by California as the California Day of the Teacher. For those of you who are not aware why we have a different Day of the Teacher than the National Teacher Appreciation Week, which was last week, California has established the second Wednesday of May every month as the Day of the Teacher, which grew out of legislation sponsored by the California Teachers Association and the Association of Mexican American Educators. So it's especially poignant this year that that day falls on May 10th, which is also Mexican Mother's Day. So as a mother and a teacher, not of Mexican descent though, I do appreciate the appreciation. Today is also National School Nurse Day, and we want to recognize our school nurses. We also want to recognize that the work that we do that is appreciated on this day does not happen in a vacuum. And we're not alone in doing it, even though sometimes it may feel that way. that standing with us as teachers, we have counselors, librarians, mental health support specialists, as I mentioned, nurses, psychologists, program specialists, vocational specialists, transition specialists, speech and language pathologists. We have activities advisors and athletic directors and work experience advisors and coaches and EDI partners and all flavors of certificated employees on special assignment. Many of them have their own celebration days. We celebrated National School Social Workers in March, School Psychologists in November. National Librarians Day was April 16th. National School Counselor Week, the second week of February. National Coaches Day, October 6th. Meaningful because it's 2 days after my birthday. Next week, May 16th, will be Speech and Language Pathologist Day. And all of our special ed employees are honored in December, on December 2nd for Special Education Day. Next meeting, we'll have an opportunity to celebrate our classified employees during Classified School Employee Week as well. California represents roughly 10% of the teachers nationwide in public schools. California represents almost 12% of the population. If you do the quick math, it means we don't have quite enough teachers for all of the people in California on a percent basis. That is why it is so special to be appreciated for the extra work we do. But I will leave the board with one of my favorite memes that comes around this time every year. And that's the one that says, if you work in a profession that has to have an appreciation day, it means you don't get paid enough. Thank you.
Next would be comments from the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, known as AFSCME. We have a representative here wishing to make a comment. Okay, next is the public comment for items not on the agenda. Our board protocols are to have 10 minutes for any specific item with 3 minutes per speaker. While you are speaking, there will be a countdown timer on the screens. And at the end of 3 minutes, your time is up. For anyone in the Zoom audience, you will see a countdown timer for 3 minutes. We're going to do public comment a little bit different tonight. We're going to break it into 2 pieces. If people wish to comment in both pieces, they can. The first piece, we're going to do 30 minutes specific to anyone who has a comment relating to or rising out of relating to events at around the MA campus on April 28th of this year. So if anyone's here to speak specifically about that, we want to know how many people there are, and we're going to have 30 minutes of comment on that item. And then we will do regular public comment for any other item. And if you wish to comment for that on any other public comment, you can. So we're going to have like 2 separate public comments. First one's gonna be 30 minutes. So I'd like to see is attendees or comment cards specific to events arising out of relating to things that happened in May on April 28th. Anybody in the Zoom audience who's wishing to speak on that as a public comment for items on the agenda, please raise your Zoom hand now. And how many do we have in the live audience?
We have 7
Okay, how many Zoom hands do we have?
so far. 2.
Okay, let's give them just a few more seconds to see if any else who's an attendee want to comment. Okay, so we'll take the 3 people with their hands up in the Zoom audience plus the 7 cards. That's 10. So each person get the full 3 minutes. And Laura, if you could lead us through those 10 names. Thank you.
All right, first up, we have JT Faraji.
I'm rarely first at anything, so this is a real treat.
Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is JT Faraji, and I'm here in support of the MABSU and the teachers, and in support of the student who is victimized. I have a few things that I wanted to say. First being, I feel that the admin staff should not call police on situations that can be de-escalated. So things that can be brought down, police should not be involved. Police often do more harm versus keeping students safe. This was the case in the incident we saw on Middlefield. The student who was already off campus, was taken, then accosted, humiliated, traumatized publicly. He was injured and had to have his surgery redone. Our students are our next leaders, our next mayors, lawyers, and firefighters. What example do we set when we cannot de-escalate situations instead escalate them to violence and potentially life-threatening situations? We need to do better. The school board needs to make sure to listen to the students that have come here tonight and act on their demands for change. They have taken the time to outline these changes and that they want to see happen. And those are what I'd like to see the school board support. And thank you.
Thank you.
If we could, I asked that we listen to public comment and we not react, no clapping or cheering or booing, just we hear the public comments.
Next, we have Ebony Freeman.
Okay, so hi, my name is Ebony Freeman. I am a freshman at MA and I work with and stand in support of BSU. So for starters, I see everyone's point of view, right? I see how the situation could have gotten to that point, but I don't support it. And I want to highlight how that situation was completely preventable if they had knew how to de-escalate and communicate with that student. At first, I didn't know how to respond. At first, I didn't want to assume anything. But now that I know that the staff knows that student and they have had multiple interactions with that student, to me, it doesn't make sense that you know the student, you know him by name, you know him by face because he's there, I guess, very often, but you don't know how to communicate with him. That to me shows that there is a breakdown in student and staff communication and relationships. And that is probably why the student felt so on guard and uncomfortable during that interaction. And that probably led up to the escalation of the situation. And I'm not here to defend the student's actions because yes, he did make mistakes. But to me, there are certain things that we should do to make sure that a student is never that angry in the first place. It's just ridiculous to me. We have all of these resources. We claim to care about mental health and understand Black students and the Black community, but yet we put ourselves in these situations and we're like a deer in headlights. Even though we have all of these protocols and all of these promises, we can never live up to them. We have student resource officers, we have counselors. None of them were seemingly present at the situation and at the scene. And both of those things could have been very good resources to use to, again, de-escalate the situation. There was a failure on everyone's part, students, staff, and police, because to put it simply, this just didn't need to happen if we had used the things that not only did we put in money for, but we put in time for, we put in effort for. I mean, we don't just hire student resource officers for them to never be present whenever there is a major situation. We don't just hire counselors for us to never call on them when we have a student that's very upset and reactionary, but yet they're nowhere to be found. And that to me is ridiculous, especially when we could put those resources somewhere else into things that are helpful, into things that we are going to use in everyday situations and big important situations. Okay, I have 41 seconds, and everything else that I want to say is kind of long, so I'm just going to end it here. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, we have Epiphany Babas.
Hi, my name is Epiphany, and I'm here on behalf of BSU. And in the 2 years that I've been at MA, I've never seen anything like close to this happen before or witnessed such an incident with an African-American man. And in many ways, this could have been avoided at MA. They could have used tactics to avoid the situation also, like staff. For example, why was staff not there at the moment that that happened? But the day after that, then they started bringing the SOR on campus, or they're like, oh, now they're here. But why weren't they there at that event? Why was there no staff there? Like, why didn't we have that? And it just makes me feel sometimes, well, that event makes me feel like kind of unsafe, because what if that was me? Like, what if it was me, the person who was pinned on the ground? And I didn't know how to feel about that. I know his actions weren't right, but I feel like his parents could have been called or something like that. Or they could have took another action or had more things to do instead of saying like an excuse like, oh, that was our last resort, even though it really wasn't. And also, it makes me feel like, just like I said, unsafe before. And I feel like there should be more transparency on campus, and also more de-escalation tactics to avoid another incident such as this. And also, this is why I just really want to see a change at MA. And I don't want to ever see like an event like this happen again, because it put like so much propaganda out there, so much people thinking, oh, it's just this, when it's really more. But I also want to see like more transparency with MA, like them doing their part. Like, I know there's certain things that they can't say because it's just not allowed and it's not what they could do. But I feel like they should at least try to do more instead of putting like students at harm. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Chloe Gentile Montgomery.
Take off my mask. Do I press start on this? Okay, sorry. Good evening, Board of Trustees and Superintendent Leach. My name is Chloe Gentile Montgomery, and I'm a teacher at Menlo Atherton High School. I teach ethnic studies, United States history, and I'm one of the advisors for the Black Student Union. This is my second year in the Sequoia Union High School District and my first year as a full-time teacher. In my short time in this district, I have seen Black students and staff be mistreated, disrespected, and let down time and time again. This is absolutely unacceptable. As the advisor of Black Student Union, I have quickly seen the way that Black students are made to feel on our school campuses unsafe, and I have moved to change that. What I would like to see is my colleagues in administration doing the same. I have heard the way that non-Black students on our campuses speak, the frequency with which they use racial slurs, mainly the N-word, with little to no repercussion. I have seen our students be stereotyped and mistreated by teachers and administrators. When I heard about what happened to one of our Black students on Friday, April 28th, I was heartbroken and angry. As a Black woman, I am not surprised by the use of force or lack of humanity given to this student by the police. But as a member of this community, I was surprised. I was surprised that our school did not have alternative options to calling the police and that they would turn on our Black students. I was disappointed because I knew that the situation could have been avoided had all staff members on campus been effectively trained in de-escalation techniques. Tonight, I would like to speak on issues that pertain to the board's governance team goals numbers 2, 3, and 5. Number 2, the district recognizes that equity requires strategic and sustainable action to meet the needs of every student and employee. 3, the district will ensure the well-being of students and students will receive appropriate behavior, academic, and socio-emotional support. And 5, the district will design and implement a highly effective recruitment, development, and retention system to attract and retain top talent, create a safe and inclusive climate, build capacity, and increase diversity. I would like to remind the board of the demands that were created by Menlo Atherton's Black Student Union in response to the police brutality incident that happened at our school. Students are calling for de-escalation practices, clearer policies for our SROs, the hiring and retention of Black staff, among other things. These demands are in direct alignment with the 3 goals that I just listed, and I urge the board to move on them urgently.
I would like to call to the board's attention the fact that if the district were to adopt these suggestions, they would not be alone in this shift in education towards more restorative and equitable practices that ensure the safety of all students. In East San Jose at Overfelt High School, the school's policy is not to call the police in these kinds of instances. Oakland Unified School District has been moving to phase out the use of SROs on campus since 2020 with the passing of the George Floyd resolution. By adopting the demands of the petition, our district would be taking a brave step in the right direction for restorative justice and ensuring the safety of all students. I encourage all attendees today to read, sign, and share BSU's petition at change.org/2023 BSU petition. Thank you for your time. You can tell I rehearsed.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeremy Array.
Good evening, school board and student trustees. I stand before you tonight as a committed advocate for change in our school system, driven by the pressing issues I've witnessed across the board. I applaud the students and allies who organized the BSU protest last week, demonstrating unity, strength, and leadership. Their achievement underscores that we can ensure safety and push for real change without police presence. This is a call to recognize and appreciate their effort rather than casting aspersions on them. I am also disheartened by the negative narratives and withdrawal of support from some in our community. These are the very people hindering progress for everyone, possibly unaware of their role in the problem, yet they claim to be pillars of equity. They labeled our BSU at MA as secretive and divisive. What is divisive is not understanding their need for safety and their frequent exploitation in social causes. Our district's decisions, often done out of obligation from people complaining instead of personal conviction and morality, consistently fall short of affecting meaningful change. We need individuals in our leadership who are willing to do the right thing consistently without pressure from school board meetings. In all honesty, we shouldn't even have to do this today. What we are doing here today as Black educators is the same thing my 92-year-old grandmother did. The same thing my uncle, who was a freedom fighter with Nelson Mandela, did. Now here we are 100 years later after experienced traumas in our families for decades living in America, still doing the same thing, trying to hope people will have empathy and change a school system that has been weaponized against people of color. When we bring issues as Black staff and students, we're often met with dismissive phrases like, "I don't like your tone. We're stronger when we work together. Don't be divisive." While unity is important, where's the call for a sense of urgency and brutal honesty from our leaders about the state of our schools? People say, focus on the kids, focus on the kids. Focusing on the kids is having a sense of urgency when they're communicating major issues in the school. Without that sense of urgency, unity is destroyed. It's impossible to develop. And I'm tired of these hypocritical and empty phrases that assuage people's guilty feelings whenever real issues are brought up. What has been modeled in our school districts and our school is how to react. I've been here a short time and that matters because my experience is the one that new employees will most likely have. They'll make similar observations about the dysfunction and the reactive mode. The only time I've ever seen our school district get ahead of a problem in my short time here is when they're afraid of being sued. White supremacy remains entrenched in our district, and I'm going to say it out loud. We haven't repaired the damages from racism, the language, the culture, the identity, the history, and the dignity. A serious commitment would be setting up a substantial fund worth millions of dollars to tackle this issue of white supremacy, anti-Blackness, and other forms of discrimination head on. And the money's there if you want to find it. Now's the time to apply pressure for change because we're doing the right thing, and this district is in a complete crisis. If we fail to transform this district completely in a way that looks like nothing that we're seeing here today, we're proving to teachers and students that their voice doesn't matter and never did. We're absolutely tired of doing this.
Thank you. Next up is Stephen Gomez.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. My name is Stephen Gomez. I'm a student at Metlaughton High School and the Vice President of Black Student Union. Over the past couple of weeks, our school has been destroyed with racism and everything that's been going on. On April 28th, 2023, at the bus stop at Middlefield Road, a lot of people were disgusted by what they saw with the police taking action on the individual who was taken down to the ground. I really think that they should never have done that and his parents should have been called. Where I really think that should have happened where they would just sit him down and tell him, hey, this is not okay. We do not know everything that has been going on, but we really want to help students connect with each other. We don't want them just attacking each other with everything. I understand that the board of trustees isn't going to apply that. We are trying to fix the situation that's going on, but we need to make sure we protect the students and everyone else as a whole. I understand that every single person at MA says that, oh, we're trying to protect everyone, but no, you're not. Things are getting worse at MA by the day and day with racism going on. And this is disgusting, and this is like no tolerance to anyone at all. Every single person in MA has a voice and must be heard, and nobody should be shouted out as well. They shouldn't be shutted up of just because what they are. No one should ever just be what they are, and they should always just speak up about their feelings and what is going on. No wonder what is going on at MA must be fixed by the district and the board of trustees. I really hope that the board of trustees can really trust the students and everyone else as a community at MA and all their schools by listening to their students, their teachers and staff, by making sure that every single person is safe at every single school in Sequoia Union High School District. I really hope that the board of trustees can really trust everyone to make this a safe and clean and good environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Taja Henderson.
Greetings. My name is Taja Henderson, and I am the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Partner of this district. Hashtag We Stand Together. I stand here tonight in solidarity, in community, and in love with MA's BSU, with its members, with its advisors, and with its supporters. As King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Towards the beginning of last year, I stood in front of the board to give a presentation about a resolution on equity, diversity, and inclusion for our district. The resolution reaffirmed the district's commitment to providing safe, welcoming, and affirming spaces for all students, staff, families, and community members. I ask you to think about, does every student in our district have a safe, welcoming, and affirming space? Does every staff member, does every family member, does every community member have a safe, welcoming, affirming space regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual preference, ability, home country, or any other system of oppression? If you answered yes, then you've not been listening. If you answered no, then I encourage you to lean into the stories that have been shared today, to the stories that were shared last week, to the stories that have been shared since the closing of Ravenswood High School in the 1970s. I encourage you to acknowledge and to be informed about the harms that have been done to the Black community by the hands of this district. You may not have been on the board when the harm was committed, but you are on the board now. You have the ability to make a statement that anti-Blackness has no place in our schools. It has no place in our district. Before I stood in front of the board to give the equity resolution, I stood in a crowd for the convocation in the beginning of the 2021-2022 school year, where Dr. Sean Harper encouraged us to be a district that collectively acts to create spaces where every student, staff, family member, and community member thrives. My question is, how will we work collectively with MA's BSU in order to do just that? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maurice Goodman.
Good evening. No. Oops. Good evening, Superintendent, trustees, students, and community. It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. That's Frederick Douglass. My name is Maurice Goodman, and I'm an educator and youth developer. I want to first say that if we understood our roles as educators, adults, elected officials, and parents to building strong children, we might not be here this evening. Let us tonight show our youth what accountability looks like. Let us commit to the equity resolution. Let us commit to the deconstruction of white supremacy, historical practices, and policies that disproportionately impact our children of color. I implore you to stand with our youth as co-conspirators and honor their demands with not just words, but action. Be on the right side of history. To the students, don't be disheartened. You are not alone. You have history and our ancestors on your side in this movement. And I just want to say personally, I didn't have much to say that I wanted to say tonight, but I wanted to make sure I honored the work that I saw last week, honor the work that I see continually by these young people as they stand and demand justice, as they stand by their young people, by their colleagues, and demanding the adults in the room to be the adults in the room. There have been many movements that were started and led and continued by young people. You are the young people that we've been waiting for. Now I'm asking you as the adults in the room, stand by their side and act. Thank you.
Thank you. Abby, are you part of this group? Come on up. Abby Corman.
I pay attention to that agenda, and that wasn't on the agenda. We were doing 2 public comments. Okay, hi, my name is Abby Corman. I'm a teacher at MA. We have 19 school days left until graduation and 1 more board meeting during the academic calendar, 2 in June. With only 1 more meeting left in the contract year for many of us, my public comment today is asking again for a board presentation and/or information on topics we've heard mentioned, but the public and even staff have very little information on. It was last March that we had our last presentation about attendance, where our new SARB process was introduced, and we've not heard about it since. I know across the country that absenteeism is up after the pandemic, and I know we're working on new systems, and it's been more than a year since we've heard any attendance information. I'm hoping to hear a comprehensive report about SARB before the school year ends. That means we only have 1 more meeting. I hope to see it on the agenda next meeting. And if not, we've waited a whole school year before reporting out on attendance in a year when the country has acknowledged that attendance is an issue. Why is that? In October of this year, when the governance calendar for the school year was shared, I said, and I quote, "I was struck we do not have attendance or mental health presentations until May. We've named as a district, this is a need of all of our students." I asked 7 months ago, and I ask again, what are our updates from the mental health task force? Where are we at with mental health contracts and MHSWs? What about our contract regarding a wellness center? We're still waiting to hear an update on how COVID mental health money has been spent and what direct services our students are receiving. As someone with boots on the ground, I can say the impact of these resources is not yet felt. Earlier this year, the board also passed funding for Gateway Community School students for this school year. And I know last year, the county superintendent, Nancy McGee, spoke about a partnership with Gateway. I asked to hear about that as well. Lastly, I'd like to ask the board and everyone listening to really reflect on the words of the previous group of speakers who've come during traffic and dinner time on a school night to make their voices heard. I appreciate Trustee Stevenson and Nori attending the BSU protest last week to speak with students in the community. But it's been disheartening to me to hear silence from adults in our district on the use of force used by Atherton PD, on behalf of one of our schools, and I've been proud to hear from our students standing up for each other peacefully and respectfully. Whether or not we agree that the school needed to call the police, I believe no educator wants a student taken to the ground, kneeled on, and handcuffed unless in the middle of the street across from the school, unless it's absolutely necessary for the safety of others. Was it? From the facts in the video, doesn't seem like it. Whether or not we agree with what happened, this incident in our community is demanding that we reflect on our practices. We've heard many instances this year of Black students and staff naming anti-Blackness, and we need to listen to them.
Thank you. That concludes the comments cards from in person. We'll move on to the comments on Zoom. First up is Sharinda Bryant.
Hello and good evening, Board of Trustees and attendees. Thank you for this time to speak. My name is Sharinda Bryant. I have served as an IA, BSU advisor, mentor, fundraiser, and teacher at Menlo Atherton for 12 years before I left to heal. I'd like to say thank you to the brave BSU students for your leadership and bravery and holding up the legacy of BSU advocacy. I am so proud of you. I want to humanize the student that suffered from the police brutality in the name situation. Weeks ago, he gave us a great idea to create an app to unite Black students at MA. And he gave us an idea for a scavenger hunt to discover history and stories. This too was on his mind. I want to appreciate teachers and staff members today during this Teacher Appreciation Week, especially the kinds of teachers that I was empowered to become through the district's growing our own program. The ones who stay committed to solving some of the toughest problems in our district and commit hours to listening to students and parents, studying and reading, learning best practices from other schools because of their level of passion. It's not about politics. It's about ensuring that students of color have a better experience in these schools than we did. In some cases, I know, educators take on the extra emotional labor as a matter of intervention. I think it's pretty distasteful to criticize people who lean in to this discomfort and they show up to do the hard work. I urge this board and my colleagues to listen to educators, to staff members, to students who stand on the front lines. Wonder why they do so and do so so fervently, instead of turning away because our passion makes you uncomfortable. Respect us enough to value our insight, our experience, our intellect, and our commitment. Let us be solution-based. Let us be radical dreamers. And let us be about the business of transformative change. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we switched order. Kyra Brown.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, good evening, SUHSD board. My name is Kyra Brown. I am a daughter of East Palo Alto. I am an alumni of Menlo Atherton High School, and I am a high school English teacher. I stand here today to say that I am deeply appalled at the treatment that African-American students faced at the hands of Atherton Police Department. In this political climate, for an adult teacher to call the police on students is completely unacceptable. And it is a lack of social responsibility, one of MA's core values. I stand with the families of students, the Black Student Union, and those most impacted by this traumatic incident, which was circulating around social media. I am calling for mandated implicit bias training for all MA staff members. Also, all members in the Sequoia Union High School District. If these matters are not taken seriously, I am willing to take these concerns to elected officials locally in order to guarantee the safety of our students and our Black students in particular. We must move, hear me please. We must move from thinking that we are allies to doing things that demonstrate that we are allies, and then to actually becoming allies. It is not enough to think that you are an ally. And for those who disagree or have other opinions on the matter, if it were your child pinned to the ground, would it change your perspective? Thank God that the student is still alive to speak and to share his experience, but that was completely unacceptable. So with that being said, I hope that we can see some action and some change, because if not, I will be back. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, we'll hear from Danny Salas.
Hi, my name is Danny Salas. I'm a sophomore at Stanford and a member of Students for the Liberation of All People in the Stanford Decarceration Collective. I wanted to echo a lot of the things that people have been saying today. I wanted to stand in support of the MABSU and the student that police were called on. I also wanted to echo the statement that police should not have been called at all. Calling the police is a drastic and threatening action, and it shouldn't be normalized. As we saw, calling the police can put people in danger and make them unsafe and make others feel unsafe. It definitely should not be a go-to for any issue. The students have outlined important changes and they need to be acted upon. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Okay. So I just want to recognize and appreciate the BSU for your thoughtful and strong advocacy. We heard a lot of calls for safety, and I think I speak for the whole board and I say that we care about the safety of all of our students and the safety of all of our staff members. We're saddened at the events that happened on April 28th. And while I know it's already happening, I encourage all the administration to reflect on any practices and any learnings or changes to reduce the chances anything like that ever happens again. Is something that I think we're all interested in seeing. So thank you again to the MABSU for your thoughtful advocacy today. So for those of you who came for that item, if you wish to stay, you're welcome to stay for as much of our meeting as you like. You're also free to leave at any time that you like. The next part of our meeting is going to be public comment for items that aren't on our agenda. If there are any other public comments about items not on the agenda, now would be the time. So if anyone in the Zoom audience is interested in making a public comment about an item not on our agenda, please raise your Zoom hand now. And if anyone in the live audience wishes to make a comment, and if you've not yet supplied a comment card to Laura Loese, please do so now. We'll wait just a few moments to see. Laura, do we have any in the live audience?
I don't, for public comment, no.
Right, okay. Okay, seeing no public comment for items not on the agenda, the next item will be information items, hatching results presentation.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Leach, Cabinet, and members of the audience. I want to introduce a powerhouse team this evening who have been part of the team in good times and in bad, rolling up their sleeves and doing the work in the sense of really trying to build out tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 multi-tiers of support as they relate to our counselors in the district. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil their presentation. So I will just introduce them. They were here last year presenting, actually at the beginning of this year. Whitney Triplett from Hatching Results, We have Glenda Ortez Galan, who is our counselor on special assignment and has been doing an amazing job working closely with Whitney to facilitate this and lift the voices of all our counselors to have this work continue to move forward. And Frankie, who is here from, or I should say Francisco, who's here from Woodside as our head counselor. He shares the head counseling position with Jackie Grimaldi, who I believe worked on the presentation with the team, is not here presenting this evening, as well as Josh Godinez from Hatching Results, who also worked with the team on the presentation. So with that, I will pass it over to Whitney.
Sure. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you, board, for allowing us the time this evening to update you on the exciting work of the school counselors throughout the district. And I would be remiss if I didn't start by saying thank you so much to the school counselors in your district who I have the privilege of working with districts all across the nation and getting to see counselors in different spaces and geographic regions with different resources and different size districts. And you all really have a fabulous, competent, committed, dedicated group of school counselors. And every time I get to work with them, it is pure pleasure. And so I really want to thank the school counselors in the district for all of their work in a really difficult time to wrap around and support students with their academic, college, career, and social emotional needs. We can go ahead and go to, actually, you want to introduce yourselves first before we jump in? Right.
Hi again, I'm Glenda Ortez Galan, COSA for Student Services, and I've worked in this district for several years, formerly at East Palo Alto Academy and at Sequoia High School.
Francisco Negri, I'm the co-head counselor at Woodside High School, and I've been in the district. This is my 18th year.
Rockstar group. I also want to say thank you to Dr. Chacon and Bonnie Hansen for their leadership in all of this as well. If we can go to the next slide. Talked a little bit about, I'm Whitney Triplett, Executive Director of Hatching Results, and my partner on this contract is Josh Godinez. He had a flight he had to catch, so he's not here with us, and you can check out our credentials if you're interested in that a little bit later. Next slide, please. So this partnership has been established since 2021. We've been in talks with the district since 2020 around implementing comprehensive school counseling services throughout the district, in which they're able to provide a multi-tiered system of support. They're supporting that MTSS school-wide, and that they're able to provide tiered interventions across 3 domains: academic, college, career, and social emotional. So you can see on the screen that our partnership consists of really 2 different strands of work. One is professional development with school counselors and related professionals, including district office staff. And then the other part, or the other work stream, is the strategic planning and systems change behind the scenes. So this is the partnership that we have with district office and decision makers to change systems such that school counselors are freed up with their time to spend more time with direct and indirect service to students, which is their giftedness. Next slide, please. So again, this work supports 3 domains. There's a lot of misconceptions about what school counselors do out there in the world, or that they just help students with academic, or they just help students with social, emotional, or career. The reality is that they're some of the only staff in the building who holistically support students. So they see the whole picture. They're working with students on their academics to be successful, as well as social, emotional learning, and help them create their college and career plans for what they want to do after high school. Next slide, please. So we've been, this year, we've been working specifically on Tier 1. In our last presentation, we shared with you all our plans for delivering a Tier 1 set, a scope and sequence of lessons by school counselors to all students in classrooms as a foundational understanding of what they need academically, college and career, and social emotionally in order to be successful. This is an equity strategy. What do all students in this district deserve to receive by virtue of breathing and being enrolled in the building as it relates to school counseling content and curriculum? So the first part of this is that Tier 1. So it's really aligned to district goals and initiatives, developmental, it's preventative, so that there's less of a need for Tier 2, Tier 3 down the road. If we do Tier 1 well, there's less intervention that needs to happen later. This is incredibly important, especially with the mental health crisis that's going on right now, to not just intervene with students in a Tier 2, Tier 3 manner, but make sure we have that foundational Tier 1 developmental curriculum for students. Next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Glenda to talk a little bit about the curriculum that has been delivered now, and that we have some results to share and some perception data from students around that. So Glenda.
Thank you. One thing I did not say is that I'm also a former Menlo Atherton High School graduate. And this work is very important to me. And I would be remiss if I did not say that I'm still processing the speeches from before. So bear with me while I present this. So I am very proud of the work that that we have been doing for the last last couple of years. As you can see from this slide, these are the lesson plans that our amazing school counseling team created. We're presenting them at a tier 1 level. You will see also that within all of these lesson plans that we have embedded SEL, as we know that we are dealing with a mental health crisis, and of course we understand the need to incorporate SEL into everything related to college career, academic, etc. And one more thing I wanted to say that as we are embedding SEL into these lesson plans, again, we understand and acknowledge the need to have more adults in the building presenting SEL to our students. We can go to the next slide. Next slide.
As you can see by the data from my colleagues, this partnership is working. We have a common language, a common structure that we can all build upon to seek and strive for that equitable experience. Whether you're at MA, Woodside, Sequoia, all students deserve the opportunity through our counseling curriculum to be prepared for what's next. Our colleagues feel confident in being able to work with each other. First time in the 18 years that I've been here, that we have a common curriculum across the district. It allows us to be innovative. It allows us to really address student needs, not from 15 years ago, but what they're experiencing now. So the structures and the language that we're using now as colleagues allows us to really work together and strive for that equitable experience. Next. And as you can see, more importantly than anything, forget about what the counselors feel, is it working with students? And with our structure, we're gathering data every presentation we do and understanding how the impact is with students. This is one example of the successes we're having within this. Our data shows pre and post in everything that we do, a baseline knowledge and the growth that we have, but more importantly, where we go year to year from here. A student being able to start with us in 9th grade and end with us in 12th grade is going to have a level of experience, level of knowledge, a level of understanding. And we're able to really identify where that student is going to be upon completion, their preparation, not only for making decisions post-high school, but also within the year to year of high school with the social emotional, with the career preparation, being able to understand where they're going to be and where we need to fill in year to year gathering this data. This allows us to really address the needs of our students and our community year to year and adjust on the fly with whatever comes up within our community. So you can see by the data, not only is it working for counselors, not only are we feeling stronger about delivering the curriculum, but it's landing for students too. Thank you.
So this slide is just one example of some of the data that counselors are learning to use to measure the effectiveness of their lessons in the classroom with students. So we're not just trying to impact student knowledge, but also their skills and their attitude. So the one that you see on the screen right now is how it's important for you students to complete a financial aid application. We know from research that students who complete financial aid applications are more likely to enroll in college and persist in college and get degrees later on, even if they don't enroll right away. And so we're really trying to use evidence-based practice and lead from the research about what works with our students. Next slide, please. So that's a little bit about tier 1. We've also started dipping our toes into tier 2. So for the students who need more than just tier 1 supports, what can counselors provide in an aligned, predictable manner? So we're talking about aligning tier 2 systems for identifying students for tier 2 in a way that's consistent between and among schools. Because right now, or not right now, but before, it was a lot of siloed efforts. Every school had their own process for this, and every school had their own resources and own interventions. We're trying to create an aligned strategy so that we can provide predictable services for all students throughout the district. So where we started with tier 2 is with FAFSA CADA completion, financial aid completion. Next slide, please. So Glenda's going to come up and talk to you a little bit about the data so far. Now, keep in mind that counselors have only been working on changing their practice related to FAFSA CADA strategy for this semester. So this is data that's coming out of just counselors aligning their strategies from school to school, and we're already seeing some really fabulous preliminary data. Glenda?
So with AB 469, with the FAFSA CADA requirement for all seniors for school districts to account for FAFSA CADA submission, we have seen a significant increase in FAFSA CADA submission. So as you can see, in 2021, 21, 22, 57 and 58% of all seniors submitted their FAFSA CADA. And as of this school year, 22-23, we've already seen a significant increase of 73% of seniors submitting their FAFSA CADA. And we are very close to reaching our 22-23 FAFSA CADA completion goal of 70%. So we're very proud of this work. I'll discuss this in the next slide in terms of our evidence of impact, but it really has been a team effort with school counselors, college counselors, parent coordinators, teachers. It really has been, it has taken, right, a tremendous amount of individuals at the school sites and also district office to raise the FAFSA CADA submission rates. And if we can go to the next slide. And pretty much what I mentioned earlier is that how we've been able to see this substantial increase is one through an increase in cash for college workshops at the high school. So most of the high schools in the past would probably provide 1 or 2 cash for college workshops. So those are financial aid workshops. And this year, some high schools had 2 or 3 cash for college workshops at the high schools. Extensive outreach to students and families about the importance of FAFSA CADA, checklists to families, email, phone calls, and tier 2 and tier 3 supports with small groups and one-on-one meetings with students. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the collaboration across with parent coordinators, liaisons, the communication that has been it's disseminated to all of our school staff and in our counseling offices and parent liaisons. So we're very proud of this work. Again, it has taken a lot of people power to be able to see this increase. And we definitely feel that we need more individuals at the school sites our goal is to increase that number. We want to see hopefully maybe 75-80% next year completion. And it would definitely will involve the collaboration of a lot of individuals on staff. Thank you.
Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So just as we conclude here, I just want to mention that there was research that came out a few years ago that suggested or found that up to 91% of initiatives and interventions we try in education don't work. So it's really important that educators are able to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing. Otherwise, we're putting all of our attention and effort into things that might not be making a measurable difference with students. I'm here to say that your school counselors are not falling in that category. Right now, they are learning how to measure the impact of what they do. And to see these types of really great results early on. I mean, the pilot FAFSA was a pilot. The tier 1 lessons this year were pilots, and we're already seeing really great data out of that. So I'm really excited to see what is going to come from this work and your school counselors throughout the district in the years to come. And I just want to thank you all so much for the opportunity for our organization to work with your amazing school counselors, districts, and leadership as well, counselors and leadership as well as you all. So thank you so much for your time. And if there's any questions, we're happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll start by just asking if there's any public comment on this item. If anyone in the Zoom audience wishes to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand now.
I do have one public comment in person.
Okay. So seeing none online, we'll take the one in-person comment now.
Abby Corman.
I'll mind you behind me. First, I'd like to say I'm constantly impressed by Glenda and Francisco whenever I work with them and our team of district counselors. This work is so important. As an English teacher, my classes are often visited by counselors, and I'd like to report students are often very engaged in their presentations, especially in recent years, especially work around transcripts and careers. Our conversations continue after they leave. I heard when this partnership with Hatching was brought about and talked about at the beginning of this school year, Trustee Dubois shared about how the board believes in investing in counselors, and I wholeheartedly agree, and I assume others agree as well. If that's true, I'd like us to make sure we're funding our counselors. I believe our current student to counselor ratio in the SDTA contract is 430 students to every one counselor. While the American School Counselor Association recommends a student to school counselor ratio of 250 to 1, we have almost 200 more students per counselor than is recommended. Can you imagine supporting the academic, social, emotional, and career pathway of 430 students in 1 year? It's hard for me to remember 170 names the first day of school. I also heard Whitney talk about how important Tier 1 services are in being preventative and serving all students. And lastly, I just want to throw in, I hope we're remembering these are not and cannot be our only Tier 1 SEL services. I'm worried about our kids, and I'd like to hear a report on what else we're doing, even though this is very important work.
Thank you.
Okay, so board member comments. Go ahead, Carrie.
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to our superintendent who funded this work a couple of years ago. I know it's really important. The question I have, because I see from the presentation, it seems like it's the push to college. And I wanted to kind of, the connection with the MTSS work, social emotional, because when you talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, that's really the MTSS. I see that different, and maybe I shouldn't. So when I know you're probably doing this, but it's just missing from the presentation, and I care about it so much. So for me, the connectedness, I was so excited by the Sequoia High School recognition of the arts programs, right? I want to as a board member, if there are kids that want to be artists, I want them to be artists, right? If there are kids that want to go to trade school, I don't want kids talked out. So I worry a little bit about the four-year college for every single kid. So the presentation felt a little bit like that. So talk to me about that other piece and how that fits in with the Hatching's work.
I think many of our counselors, if not all of them, would agree with you entirely. If we had more time, we would love to include all the great things counselors are doing. We just chose to focus on the couple that they're measuring right now. But when we talk about MTSS, it's all three domains. So a lot of misconception about MTS being just academic and behavior. Counselors, we know, provide tiered supports in college and career domain as well. Up until about 15 years ago, College for All was the theory, that was the initiative, that was the push. And at the time, leading researchers and others in the field felt like that was the best use of time in public schools, is to make sure that for equity and education being kind of like the great equalizer, that College for All was going to serve our students the best. We now know after 15, 20 years of research on that is not the case. We really need to be able to advise our students around multiple post-secondary pathways. And so knowing that many of your counselors came out of grad school programs that taught us College for All mentality, they've now been learning on the job for the last, decade or so, and there's still a growth space here. How do we advise our students on other pathways besides 2- and 4-year college, registered apprenticeships, full-time employment with a family supporting wage, service year and gap year programs, military enlistment, and all types of other very legitimate pathways, career credentials, and those kinds of things that happen too. Right now, I think like ratio no-shows and non-counseling duties and other types of things definitely prohibit counselors from being able to really wrap around holistically with their 430 students and that kind of thing. So I think that's the reality of what's going on. But many counselors, and Francisco here, in addition to Glenda, who is a counselor frequently, most of us in the profession very much agree. We advise students on multiple post-secondary pathways. So although we were presenting FAFSA today, counselors are working to that end, but there probably is quite an opportunity for additional professional development and training, not just for counselors, but all staff in the building who advise kids on post-secondary, because it's not just counselors, it's our teachers as well, especially AP and IB and other types of teachers like that, are administrators and other staff in the building. So I appreciate your comment, and I think that that's very important. I think we would agree with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work. I think this is a great example of collaboration across sites, which is something I know the board is also interested in taking a look at, what things should be more consistent across the district versus site controlled. But I think this is great because when you look site by site, it's a small number of counselors, but when you bring everyone together across the district, it's a much larger group. There's more networking and feeling of community just within the counseling team. And I think that's great. I do want to hear, since these are pilots, what were some of the things that were successes and areas of improvement before you roll things out?
So one thing I wanted to say is that for the first time that the entire school counseling team were able to come together to create these lesson plans. It's in the 16 years I worked here, that's never happened before. So we're very proud of that. And we did present these lesson plans and we did roll these out. But I'm wondering if you can, I just wanted to get a little more clarification around your question, the second part of your question.
If you have shared and rolled it out, maybe I'm just too new. I missed the presentation, so maybe I need a recap.
Yes. So all of the lesson plans that are on the slideshow, the table that has all the grade level lesson plans, we presented the majority of all of those lesson plans. Yeah, for the first time during this school year.
I'm wondering, I'm sorry, go ahead and answer. Go ahead.
I was just going to comment we're looking at the lessons now and adapting them and finding out which places that were just slam dunks and what areas we can improve, where our students already had a solid baseline knowledge and where we can really extend out a little bit further and push a little bit more. We absolutely look at addressing all our students. I know at Woodside, we have about 55% of our students will choose to go to a four-year college. The remainder go community college or something else. So it is absolutely imperative that we address all student needs. I think we're constantly, as a school counseling department, looking at ways that the district can be more innovative in addressing students that are going outside of the realm of even community college to transfer. How can we better enhance the student experience so that they're better prepared beyond that point? And so those are areas that we're looking to grow. I think there was a mention about what we're looking to grow at. And I think the commonality that we're using now, the structures that we're using now, allow us to be innovative like that and to really kind of adjust our practice from year to year according to the students in front of us.
I have a couple of questions. One is around having time in the classroom to be able to do the tier 1 services. I am a social worker, and I know that time is of the essence. And sometimes being a social worker in an education field, we're not always given the time. Can you talk to me a little bit more about what that looks like? What you're learning about that?
Hey.
All right, y'all.
Yes, a reality in education, it's, everyone has important information to deliver. And so it's been working with the partnership of our district leadership to be able to make it a priority, passing it through administration, department chairs to be able to buy that time. I think it was easier this year, especially with the collective lesson plans, to be able to get that time. As we're growing it out, it's going to be something that we'll have to have continued discussions to make sure that we have the time to implement appropriately. And so although it was very good this year, it is something that we will continue to strive and work with our partner, our teachers, to be able to make sure that there's time for everything.
So given what you've learned today, and I know as you, was it upscale? Like I'm tired, y'all. What is it when you make it?
Scale it.
Yeah, scale it. There it is. Upscale was not the right word. But when you scale it up, then things change from a pilot, which is easier, right? Because you're working with a group of people who want to give you space. But then as you scale it out, you may deal with some issues around time, space, priority. And I'm not for sure for Hatching Results how you've done this in other places, but I'm wondering, how do you troubleshoot that? You know, is it my imagination that I can foresee some issues with trying to scale this out?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. That's a common struggle for counselors to push into a classroom. One of the protections we're putting in place right now, I mean, teachers, in my experience, don't push back for interrupting instructional time if they know it's a good use of time. They push back if it's a waste of time. And so one of the things we're training counselors to do is to be able to measure the impact of what they're doing. They're not just creating presentations, which is what a lot of counselors start doing. They just go in the classroom and deliver a presentation and fire hose kids. Your counselors are not doing that. They're creating lesson plans that are highly engaging. They're not lecturing kids. They're talking for a few minutes and then having them do activities and hands-on things and skill building and talking with one another. And so when we're able to share back the pre-post test results with teachers and say, look what students learned, and like we're hearing from teachers that they like the lessons, they're fun, it's a good use of time, then there's not as much pushback. I was actually surprised how little pushback there was from teachers in this district, quite frankly, because usually we see a lot more. There wasn't for this particular practice session in the fall. Now, the issue is going to come if we want to add additional lessons later on, or if there is a need for that, because right now we're asking for the time just for those lessons. If we feel the need to branch out and have additional social emotional lessons or academic lessons, college and career, that would be additional instructional times. That's something we're going to have to troubleshoot at some point. There's lots of ways that districts have approached that creatively with bill schedules and advisory and different ways of doing that. And we can talk about that when we get to that point. Right now, we're not seeing that as much of an issue, luckily.
Okay. I just foresee some of the lessons we learned during the pandemic around having protected time for students to learn some of this information. Because I know on the college end, I have a lot of friends who are college professor saying kids are coming in very different than they did 5 years ago. And so some of these skills that you're teaching them, I know it's financial aid, but there's going to be other, I saw financial planning. I know financial literacy is coming down from, I think there's a bill out right now for financial literacy, which we actually heard from our students that it would be helpful for college so they're not in massive debt, which we know is just feels like enslavement within itself if you have too much debt. And so we want our kids to have financial freedom. So as I'm thinking about that, I'm just trying to think about what we've learned through COVID, even though nobody wants to revisit it. But there are some things we learned, and that was some of the protected times that our teachers and our students needed to focus on themselves. The other piece I wonder about is, where does mental health lie within this? And mental health isn't necessarily one-to-one therapy. It could be a variety of things. And so I'm wondering how maybe I should use the term more mental wellness for tier 1. So how does that lie within that?
So we are looking into that's such a big question and a complicated thing. As you know, we have our wellness programs coordinator. We have interviews for that position next week to get that moving forward. And I know we've talked about and presented here at the board meetings, the idea of really having, much like Hatchings and our counselors are presenting today, those aligned systems across site wellness centers. I know we've all gone to the sites and visited their wellness spaces and seen the systems that they have in place, and have heard your voices come back and say, the spaces are amazing. And we wish that we knew there was insurance that all sites were offering this across the board. And what does that look like? And so through our wellness programs coordinator working alongside Swell, that is the goal there. Where Hatchings comes into that is where it gets a little bit complicated, because these systems do play together in the sandbox. It is the same. Our counselors do oversee a lot of mental health. And that's where we see both our wellness centers and our counseling departments really needing to work together to decide, what does our referral process look like? When we refer a student, for example, for a mental health issue, who is the first line? Does it first go to the wellness center and counselor is brought in, or is counselor seen as sort of the primary care provider who then takes it to the wellness center if it's something they can't troubleshoot? And that's the piece, because our wellness center alignments are going to be new with something the wellness program coordinators will work on. And the Hatchings work is going to be newly going into talking about tier 2, tier 3 and referrals. Serendipitously, that's starting to happen at the same time. The answer to your question will come in time as those systems gel together. We don't have those answers yet, though. Okay, did that?
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing. Going back to our tier 1 curriculum, is that in the past, when we would provide, and I'm going to say a presentation, right? It was about the topic. So we were going to present about financial aid as about financial aid. But now what we've done in creating our lesson plans is, again, embedding SEL into those lesson plans. So when we're talking about financial aid or FAFSA-CADA, we're also discussing the importance of financial planning and how that reduces stress, right? Because you won't have to worry about, like, where students worry about, how am I going to pay for college, right? And we talked about the importance of financial planning. And in the 9th grade lesson plan, so the counselors, when we met, as a group, we decided on what topics we were going to cover at each grade level. And at the 9th grade, we decided that we would, the fall lesson plan was Introduction to High School. And a lot of it is around resources. Who can you go to for support? Who is your school counselor? What are the resources at your school site? So we are, covering it as much as we can. It really also depends on the grade level, but within each lesson plan, especially in the 9th and 10th and 11th grade, there is an SEL task or activity embedded into that, because we're just constantly reminding students on the importance of self-care and how we need to incorporate that in our daily lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Last question. I know Abby Corman said something about the ratio. What is our ratio here of our counselors and as part of this process? Do you know? You can guess.
If I can read Edith's lips, it's 4:30 to 1. Was that accurate? Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate this. This has a lot of potential, so I'm looking forward to hearing more. Thank you.
So I just want to reflect back a few things I heard that I really liked, and I have one question at the end, but common curriculum and equitable experience across the sites. I think that's great. It's something that I've said before. I don't think it should be a lottery what school you go to or what classroom you end up in. And I want to kind of pile on to what Carrie was talking about, and you mentioned half or just over half of the students go to college and others don't. And really, I agree that it's important to help students with whatever their next step is. And I'm glad to hear that this program is doing that. One kind of question, my understanding of MTSS is that there's the curriculum piece, which you kind of highlighted, but that there's also an assessment piece, or is MTSS include assessments? And is that something you'll be presenting at another time, or just didn't include and those are already happening? Or am I not understanding MTSS correctly? I understand there's like curriculum and there's assessments with data-driven assessments for referrals.
Yeah, there definitely is. So MTSS is really complex, and just boiling it down, it's how you're delivering tiered supports based on students' data-driven demonstrated needs. And the important part of that is progress monitoring the supports you do provide to students to find out whether they work or not, so that we're not spinning our wheels doing things over and over that aren't working. So there's a couple of assessment pieces that are related to that. There is assessing the effectiveness of our lessons, assessing the effectiveness of our interventions, and then there's also universal screeners types of things to figure out who are the students that are coming up and showing up in the data that need support immediately. And so this is where Dr. Chacon's talking about all this is starting to come together, and we're kind of trying to play in the sandbox together under Shana Karashina's great leadership with the MTSS department, and then our department and wellness centers and all these other things that are happening. Figuring all of that out and how we create all these aligned systems, that's the work. So that's what's before Dr. Chacon over here under her purview. And so we're working on that now, but you're absolutely correct that assessments are part of that. Does that answer the question?
So they're part of it and you're working on them. So maybe we'll hear about that in a year, the
That's
assessments.
some, and we're working on others.
At some point, we'll hear on the assessments and how that's going. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much for your presentation. Do a quick survey if you guys want to take a break now or do the LCAP first. Okay, I'm hearing a clear.
Can I make a public comment if you're going to take a
Sure.
break?
Yeah.
My name was mentioned with this presentation and it really should not have been because I've done zero work with it. So just to be transparent about that, Liz, Dr. Chacon has, whatever, thank you. I think you guys are doing awesome work and Francisco was really key in getting it here. But I think if there's an employee of the year for me this year, it's Glenda Ortez Galan. And what she has made happen. And I mean, I've worked with her a long time, so I know she's organized and I know she's really good at working with people and a consummate professional. But just her gentle tagging of like, okay, Bonnie, we met about this and can I write that up for you? Or our next step should be, and let's meet next week. And I've just seen her, I mean, just for all of our counselors to be doing the same lessons on the same topics across the district. I've been here since the cows came home. That is unheard of in this district. And I'm so excited. If you need to let me go or let her go for budget cuts, by all means, let me go. I'm just super, super grateful and excited for what's happened this year. So thank you, Linda.
All right, thanks for that. So we'll take a break for 10 minutes. We'll come back at a little more than 10 minutes, 7:55. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're continuing with our agenda this evening. Our next item is item 15.1, discussion of LCAP proposed goals and action plan.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. A special shout out to Rich Ginn, who gave me 4 cough drops that are in my favorite flavor. I am so grateful to you. If I leave the room suddenly, I do not have COVID. I've tested many times. I've just had the same cold since my child started kindergarten in the fall. But I will leave with my laptop if you cannot hear the other presenters over me. So I'm before you this evening for the LCAP, the proposed goals and actions. You will, of course, see the final document in front of you at both June meetings for your approval. But the heart and soul of the LCAP is the goals and the actions that go along with them, which is why we spend more time on them. A few comments before I turn the mic over to the authors of the various LCAP goals. The first is that this is the 3rd time that we have had this series of LCAP goals and actions. So most of it should be extremely familiar to you. We have had 19 listening sessions with various constituents since the fall started, including the Student Advisory Council last night. And we have had over 6,000 of our constituents complete surveys. This has gotten a lot of input. You have already seen it to give input on more than one occasion. It is my great hope that you will not have great changes to this LCAP. We've had it for 3 years and we've been talking about it since September. That said, if there's something that's really going to keep you up at night, by all means, please let us know. but I did want to iterate the amount of time and energy that has gone into communicating this document and to getting it vetted by constituents. The other thing that I want to note, or one of the other things, is that throughout the goals and actions, you are going to find pieces that are crossed out. If something is crossed out, it means that it was a goal or an action last year, and we are recommending that it not be in the coming year. You will also see a great deal of red font, because part of making sure that you hear from your constituents is taking in the common themes of changes that they would like to see made. So where you see red font, it's because it was the voice of different constituent groups consistently saying that it was an area that they wanted to see us make a change in the verbiage or in an action. There are 2 goals that are sunsetting this year. We do our best to follow the governance goals because we want to be marching in the same direction. And so we don't want to have a separate set of LCAP goals from the governance goals. Each year we have updated LCAP goals based on changes in governance goals. And I know we're going to get better about this in years to come. But what typically happens is the LCAP gets adopted in June, the board has a retreat in July, and the board updates their goals in July. And then we're out of step on the LCAP until we come to you again the next June so that we can catch up with you. And then we get back aligned, and then you guys have your retreat in July. And if a goal changes, then we're out of alignment again. And that's not the end of the world. It would be good if we could get our calendar set. I think it actually is, for that to not be the case in this coming year. But that's a reason that you'll see 2 of the goals sunsetting. So one of the goals that is sunsetting is the small schools goal. That goal is sunsetting because most of the actions associated with that goal have been accomplished. And you'll be able to see that on the slides. The one action that has not been completed has been moved. There are 2. One has been moved to another goal, and the other one is a project that we are abandoning, and I'll explain it when I get to it. The other one is that we used to have a goal around bringing students back from distance learning and around incorporating some of what we learned during distance learning about what was good for education back into the classroom. I am so grateful to say that we are done with getting everyone back from distance learning. May it never show up in an LCAP goal again during the lifespan of anyone in this room, because may we never have to go through an experience like that again. But we did take the second half of that goal and incorporate it into goal 1, because there are practices such as providing technology for students who need it that we are continuing on with, because we learned that that was something that was a field leveler for us during the LCAP. The last thing I will say before I turn the floor over to the LCAP authors is that one of the changes that we made in LCAP Goal 1 was at your governance retreat, you added quite a bit of verbiage that definitely tied in with successful educating of students. But goal 1 is more of has been more of a curriculum and instructional goal, and Vicky is the author of that goal. And so you put in a word about attendance and about following attendance norms and improving attendance, which we absolutely need to do and completely agree with. But I work with Dr. Chacon, and we actually did not put an attendance goal in goal 1. We actually crossed the attendance out. It is in goal 3, and it is action 3.5, because for our purposes in the LCAP, the attendance goal fits more logically under LCAP goal 3. So I just want to say, for anyone who might care, we care very much about attendance. We know you need to be here to get an education, and we know there are lots of things, as Abby talked about when she spoke, that are making this a crisis nationwide. So it is in no way, shape, or form that we do not think attendance matters. We absolutely do. We just incorporated the action for that into goal 3 instead of into goal 1. And with no further ado, I've asked for the authors of the goals to keep their comments, if at all possible, to 2 minutes, because even with that, it will still be a lengthy discussion. I want to thank Stephanie Ogden for coming tonight, because one of the new goals, the only new goal that is not a part of the board updates, is that the state has added a new piece of legislation that says if you as a district have got 2 groups on the dashboard or 2 areas on the dashboard where you scored very low, then you have to have a goal specific to that in your district. And if you have a school site that scored very low in 2 or more categories, you have to have that as a separate goal. Of course, Stephanie's doing incredible work with her staff. And one of the areas was graduation rates. They take all our 5th and 6th year seniors. We do have to have a goal around it, so it's there, but we're grateful for she and her team, the work already happening, and we will continue in that. It is not a reflection of them. It is a reflection of an ed code thingamabobber. So I thank you for being here with us tonight to present. I hope there was no press to hear me say thingamabobber as the Associate Soup of Ed Services. And with no further ado, I will turn it over to Vicky Dye for Goal 1.
Hello, good evening. And remotely, I can't advance the slideshow, so I'll follow the advancing that happens with lots of lead-in. Hi. Hello, President Ginn, trustees, cabinet, Superintendent Leach. It's a pleasure to speak with you this evening. In Goal 1 now reads that the district will improve preparation for college, career, adult, and civic responsibilities for all students by strengthening quality curriculum and instruction, including building on innovative practices developed during distance learning. The wording of this goal was changed for readability. At some point, it only spoke to some of our hopes for curriculum and instruction. And during the process of aligning with board goals and stakeholder input or participant input, the component about improving preparation for college, career, and civic responsibilities for all students was added. But it read that we hoped to strengthen quality curriculum instruction by improving engagement, rigor, and preparation for college, career, et cetera. And that was a little bit like saying that we were going to eat dinner by filling up. And so I think that what we want to say is that we want to fill up by eating dinner. So what we want to do is we want to improve the preparation for college, career, adult, and civic responsibilities for students. And the way we're going to do that is by strengthening the kind of instruction and our adherence to curriculum that we see in the classroom. And then, like Bonnie mentioned, we also included the component about including building on our innovative practices. Now, you might wonder what happened. Bonnie explained what happened to attendance, and you might wonder what happened to rigor. Why don't we like that anymore? I think you'll see in our actions that we've in fact deepened our commitment to rigor with the addition of a few words, and I'll explain in just a moment. Engagement is an outcome, an essential, crucial outcome of instruction that is high quality and aligned to our standards. So moving on, in action 1.1, there wasn't much change. We are still aligning to the existing standards in all content areas, and we're providing curriculum that is aligned to standards. In action 1.2, that's where we see the shift that I mentioned. We added a few words that are pretty powerful, and I'll explain why. As you can see in the red font, that we added that we're going to provide professional development and support for equitable access to standards aligned rigor and quality interactions in classroom instruction. And the reason that we added the modifier standards aligned is because everybody has a different idea of what rigor means. But there is one meaning of what rigor is, and it's defined by the standards. The standards tell us what rigor means for that content area. It's not the amount of homework we have. It's not the length of a book we read. It's not how heavy our backpack is. It has to do with the skills that we're building that are defined by the standards. And it's in this area. I included it in, we included it in the component, the action about instruction, because it's already part of the standards. We don't have to put it in 1.1 where it says we're aligned to the standards. That means we're aligning to standards aligned rigor, but we do have to put it here because the kind of instruction that our teachers deliver must be the kind of instruction that builds the skills that are called for in the standards. In other words, we have to shift away from didactic approaches and towards student-centered active learning, and that's the kind of professional development and support that we provide in order to see that shift in instruction. In other words, we're not going to learn to become more critical readers or better writers or deeper thinkers and analyzers by sitting and getting. That's not how we learn to do those things. We learn to do those things with student-centered instruction that's rich with student dialogue and the right kind of well-structured dialogue. We learn to do those things with repetitions and feedback and coaching. And by the way, also strong relationships are crucial for that, but that's a part of another goal. So that is why we added standards aligned rigor, because we specifically mean rigor that's defined in the curriculum, the standards that we have for each content area. Now, why equitable? Well, equitable access to standards aligned rigor means that we have to not make access to standards either you get support and the kind of support you need, or you get to have access to rigor. We need to do both. And that's also the kind of PD and support that we provide for teachers. And the way we do it is through the things that are detailed here, things like differentiation in UDL and low floor, high ceiling design, et cetera, et cetera. So that explains that shift. That otherwise goal 1.3 has not changed at all. We are really committed still to supporting English learners in every content area. It's called for by the California ELA-ELD framework, the roadmap, the ELD roadmap. We're providing robust support for these practices in classrooms, and we're continuing to build out curriculum, especially for emerging multilingual courses. It's great. And it is a journey of 1,000 miles that we are embarked upon. And goal 1.4 is, as Bonnie said, the former goal 5. And so it is taken right from there. And I think that's all I have to say.
That means it's my turn. I'm goal 2 around equity. We can advance the slide. Hi, good evening, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Leach, President Ginn. It's nice to see you here, and I am zooming in. So our goal 2 has not changed. It still focuses on equity, requiring strategic and sustainable action to meet the needs of every student and employee. We commit to design and implement structure, systems, and policies that achieve equity in our instructional, institutional, and employment practices. There are 4 actions that I'm going to go through, and I will go through them, sharing mostly just what the changes are. Next slide. So this first action is about identifying and removing barriers for students to meet the UC A through G requirements necessary for meeting college and career pathways. The change here is really just to make it more current. I think it was written as if we're still in the past. So it's just saying what we have done about adjusting 9th grade course offerings in math over the last 3 years. And it also reflects that some of the data that has been shared around this initiative and our efforts to continue to evaluate it and examine the math initiative. Next slide. Action 2.1 is focused is still on barriers, identifying and removing barriers for students. We utilize, we put in some of our additional programs that we have going on at our schools with the Boys and Girls Club, the 49ers Academy, and Upward Bound. We moved the piece about analyzing the math initiative to the other one we had just talked about, and also added one of our actions around developing a college and career readiness guide for our students and our families, so they have a clear understandings of what their progress is towards graduation and meeting A through G requirements. We did send out a beta version of this in the summer, and we are continuing to work on this to help everyone understand personally where they're at with respect to graduation and meeting A through G, and to try to make it more transparent and navigate that very complicated educational landscape. So the third bullet point talks about data transparency, which we had in there in the past. And when I speak again on goal 6, you'll see that we've expanded a bit on the actions, and there are related expenditures to those possible data platforms and dashboards that we can use to really reflect on our progress as an institution. Next slide. Action 2.2 is around focusing on diversity and equity. And this one is, a lot of this is based on feedback from other people as well, focusing on maybe defining a structure for what each of the equity and diversity councils look like at each of the schools, with some anticipated outcomes and shared ideas of what equity should look like and what should take place. We've changed some language to move from a English learner or LEP limited, we're trying to change the language to more of an asset-based approach. So where in the document it says EL, we're trying to change it to emerging multilingual. And we are also looking at increasing our outreach with our community partners, some of which has already been shared in the prior presentations around the FAFSA and CADA. And we are looking at, I just made it current, adopting ethnic studies has been implemented as a graduation requirement. Next slide. This slide focusing on systemizing programs for English learners. And we added one bullet point to this action around partnering with our feeder districts to align our efforts around reclassification, which is a great way for us to share data back and forth with our feeder districts and ensure our students have a successful transition into our district. Next slide. 2.4 focuses on our outcomes for students with disabilities. The only addition here is about adding training for paraprofessional staff towards preventing NPS placement due to conduct disorder. Next slide. This is also about student disabilities. And again, a bullet point was added here about focusing on training teachers and case managers to effectively align accommodations and domain exemptions. This really, again, focuses on the reclassification process for our students who are both English learners and students with disabilities and are considered to be dually classified. Next paragraph. Done. Garrett, you're on.
All right, goal 3 is up, and I believe Shayna is in the room to kick it off. There she is, perfect timing.
Hi, Jarrett. Hi, good evening, Board of Trustees, President Ginn, Superintendent Leach. I am here in person so that I don't get distracted by the Warriors game. So we didn't do many changes to goal 3, which is our MTSS goal, in terms of the original focus of building out multi-tiered system of supports. So next slide, please. Here we made some more changes. So we took in the feedback that was provided regarding the need for clarity and timeline and expectations with building out our systems of support. So you can see there that we have kind of the first area is really about planning and partnering with the site teams and with the district. So the first one is actually, it's the second bullet, but we've developed this past year, the MTSS committee who's met all year. And with that committee, they're reviewing projects from different areas of support pathways like attendance, social emotional learning, articulation, safety planning, behavior, and kind of any of those projects and pathways that come up. The committee reviews that, provides feedback, and then shares that feedback with the respective teams that are working on that particular expansion area for intervention. And then ultimately that gets included into our MTSS policy, which is the first bullet there. Will be coming out next year. It's our MTSS policy bulletin. With that includes the MTSS toolkit that includes resources and tools to assist site teams in creating their own implementation plan. It includes our professional development and training. That was one of another area of feedback, to provide that to teachers and other staff to learn more about MTSS. Also with new teachers and staff coming aboard, getting up to speed with MTSS as well. So that professional development piece is in there as well. And data analysis and coaching. So a lead team will provide some data analysis support for site teams and other pathway teams looking at implementation data for their interventions as they're analyzing it. And then further down, we also added college and career because for some reason that wasn't included in the original. So we definitely want to highlight that, especially with all of our MTM DSS work with the counselors and our COSA, and want to make sure that that's very much included as that's being worked on. The other piece in one of those bullets as we're exploring our referral process to access interventions, we are noticing inequities. So that line in there about removing inequitable intervention access for disproportionate student groups is in there as well. The other piece about developing SEL framework. So in the past year, we've shifted from our SEL task force to our SEL pilot cohort. Big props to them. They're doing amazing work. The pilot cohort trials the research-based social emotional learning interventions, takes pre and post data for their work with the students that they're working with, and they will provide recommendations to the MTSS committee to be included within the MTSS policy. Additionally, we have developed a scope and sequence that's aligned for social emotional learning that's aligned with CASEL, that collaborative, and the California Department of Ed mental health model, as well as our transformative social emotional learning standards that deal with equity. Okay, next slide. Here again, just making sure our college and career is highlighted and included, and that the lead team provides data analysis support and planning for this coming year. Next slide. Again, attendance is highlighted, and another goal, and Jarrett's going to jump into going over the next action item in this goal regarding attendance more thoroughly, but we wanted to make sure that we have attendance and college and career included in our data tracking system, so that we're looking at whole child information rather than just specific areas of progress. And then, the final item that got included into our MTSS goal in 3.3 is making sure that we have a bigger group or a more diverse group of educator voices that it's reviewing and included in our review of different intervention pathways, different work that's happening. Okay, next slide, Jarrett.
All right, and action 3.5 is promised by Associate Superintendent Hansen. And action to improve student attendance as removed and transferred over from goal 1. We are going to be increasing our support with not just ongoing, but increasing some of the training and professional development for all of our staff around our school attendance review team, as well as our student attendance review board, our policy bulletin on that. We will be updating this summer, and we will also provide ongoing professional development for our attendance monitoring system, which is attention to attendance, as well as Shannon just alluded to the MTSS data system from action 3.3. Importantly, adding some funding to increase school site supports for attendance directly is the addition here in the second bullet. And we are proposing through the LCAP to support the absenteeism of unduplicated students that are chronically absent and or truant by adding bilingual community liaison workers. And per the job description for our community liaison workers, specifically focusing in on attendance for unduplicated students to liaise between school sites and families by conducting home visits, coordinating attendance conferences, addressing welfare issues, connecting to community and school site resources, just to name a few things that we envision our community liaison workers to be doing in those roles.
All right, goal 4 is sunsetting. It has already sunsetted as you did what we are now doing, and you incorporated small school outcomes into what we want for all of our sites. So next slide, please. Tide got a great WASC accreditation. Next slide. Tide's facilities are looking great. Next slide. EPA and Redwood got beautiful WASC accreditations. Next slide. We are moving CTE pathway support for Redwood because we know it's a needle mover for students into our new goal 8, which is actually goal 6 for Redwood. Next slide, please. We abandoned this because we no longer have a director of small schools and alternative ed. And it just decided that the small school catalog was not going to be a priority. Next slide, please. WASC is also done for Tide Academy. You're back on 4. Come on, Josue, you're not keeping up with me. Now I'm going to goal 5. Keep going. I'm fast, huh? Goal 5. Okay, we're back from distance learning. Thank goodness. We are using innovative practices that we learned, and we'll continue to look at others from during the pandemic. And we're keeping up with you in doing that. Next slide, please. Enhanced summer programs, ELD summer enrichment programs to help students on their recovery from the pandemic are still happening. They've now been moved to goal 1. Next slide, please. One-to-one devices, internet connectivity are still happening. They're in goal 1. Possible instructional shifts is on hold. We wait to hear the direction of the board and what we hope will be a calmer year for us to look at other endeavors in the year to come. Online tutoring is still happening. Next slide, please. And Diana, we're back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bonnie. So goal 6 was one of the newer goals that was introduced. It was really, in year 2 of the 3-year plan that came in from the governance goal. But the idea of having a district effort, long-term effort to data share with our K-8 partner districts and our community college districts. Happy to say that it was started in earnest with an MOU. Sorry, next slide. Josue, my apologies. It was started with an MOU. We did a data warehousing solution with San Mateo County Office of Ed. And we're encouraging other feeder districts to also engage in this MOU so that we could start sharing across between feeder districts and our community college districts. This really is a collective countywide effort. But given that we do need to move forward with data visualization and use of data, we have added a few more action items in this goal to help generate data for our use and to see how we're doing on our other goals. So the next slide. So the proposed action is to really in earnest look at our dashboard, a local dashboard. I know you're all very familiar with our lovely dashboard, which is mostly PDFs of Excel spreadsheets. And we're moving towards hoping to create a visualization of our local dashboard to help our community better understand our demographics and our student progress. We're hoping that we could offer both internal and public facing dashboard, something that even our feeder districts could use as well to understand how their students are making progress in our high school district. And it is data that is sort of established at a snapshot, our local dashboard, based on the first Wednesday in October to align with CalPADS and the state enrollment. But this is a way for us to really move our system more forward and help us just guide our practices and guide our policies, so everyone can slice and dice the data in the way that they want to. And next slide. This has really come out of the work with the college and career readiness guides and the regular requests for data around trying to understand how our students are doing with respect to making progress towards graduation in A through G. And so this would be a more of a dynamic day-to-day actionable data analytics platform where we could build something to help our administrators and our counselors and our advisors or whomever is involved in the supporting our students to make sure that if they need credit recovery, if they need to make sure that their courses count towards A through G, or, whatever they need to get to make sure they get graduated on time, and that if they're on the cusp of meeting A through G, we can identify that for them. So we are working to get our data systems up in place in a visual format that's easy to use for our administrators. The last action around this item in next slide is something we've done for years, but it went on hold like during the pandemic, and now we're back to it again, which is conducting articulation meetings between our partner districts and our district in collaboration to focus on English learners, asset-based math assessments, and how do we use Lexile measures to monitor student progress in English language arts. So we've been doing a lot of work with our department chairs and county office, as well as the Stanford Sequoia Collaborative, to really support our efforts in sharing data with our feeder districts. And I think it really speaks to the work around Goal 6, around aligning our efforts. And this is work that is ongoing, and it really seems to help move the system forward. And that is it for my goal. Next slide.
All right, well, good evening. Goal 7 is really focused on human resources with an emphasis on building more consistency across our recruitment and hiring processes. The other side of this is definitely looking at ways we can increase a diverse work staff. We do use our data in order to do that, but what I'll share on the next slide if we can. You want to go back one? Missing one. So what I'll do is just real quick, one of the things we have to take a look at is the pool of talent or educational professionals that we have available. What we're seeing within the last 50 years or so is that there's a decrease, sadly a dramatic decrease in the number of individuals going into the profession of education. And this is talking about a certificated staff, which is our teachers, counselors, social workers that we have, to our classified staff, paraprofessionals, bus drivers, other support groups, and management. So overall, like I said, this becomes a harder concern for us, and definitely a more important concern for us in that it makes it more important for us to try to be more proactive in our recruitment efforts to draw from our groups as best as possible for those that are deciding to go into the profession. All right, next slide. All right, just to highlight just a couple things on here. Definitely what we're building is a recruitment, hiring, retention plan, and that is also maintaining the consistency that we're looking for across all sites and departments. We're also being more proactive in participating in employee job fairs. In that, we're not just looking at the local ones, we're going beyond just what we have within the counties or local counties. In addition, we're trying to really increase our attract to retain our BIPOC staff by going to one area that we looked at this year and we're able to touch on was historically Black colleges. We were able to go to 2 of those, or my director of HR was able to do that. If I go to the next one. Okay, this again is going to have to do more with the consistency side of things. One part I think in here, which I find very exciting, and it's going to be that third bullet on there, and providing more resources for our veteran teachers. I have to give a shout out, and I will do this over and over again, but to our PAR group that we have, our PAR coaches are quite amazing. And one thing they started looking at this year was providing that additional support, not just in a large group. They don't have to do this for a semester or a year, but maybe picking a specific topic or skill or strategy that our veteran teachers like to focus on, and having a coach now to be able to do that and guide them through that. Again, it was their idea. It was fantastic that they're doing this, and it's on a voluntary basis. The other part of the last one on there in that slide is we're able to talk with our diversity coaches to try to find some different ways we can expand our opportunities to recruit and retain some of our teachers. They were very instrumental in what we were looking at when we went to the job fairs. Okay. Next one. Okay, so for our next one here, again, looking at support for our diverse workers. One area that we're looking at is developing an equal employment opportunity plan. This is a key factor that we want to put into place. It's actually very, very rare. Sure, the equal employment opportunity plan. So again, it's extremely rare to have that in a K-12 education. You primarily see this in either business practice or business organizations, or in the educational field, it's mainly in your community colleges is where we see them. So we're kind of breaking new ground on this, which is pretty exciting to put this together. Okay, we got our next one. Okay, and again, aligning our practices to support our diverse workforce. The key areas in here, in all reality, it comes down to ensuring that what we're doing is legally and ethically sound in the way we're doing our hiring. Especially through the onboarding process, through consistent questions through our interview processes. Try to really train our panel members on what we're looking for, taking away what could be considered a bias responses or way we look at things, and being really focused on the ability of the individual based on their experience. And the next one, see if I saw that on here. Oh, yes. The other part is how can we grow our programs? I do have to give, again, our Ed Services Department doing a great job in developing our own program, really building our classified staff, which is our instructional groups, instructional professionals to become teachers. Very excited to be part of that. The other things we want to take a look at is also providing supports for our teachers that like to go to administration, and also supports for administrators so they can, again, strengthen their skill sets. And I think that was it for me. All right, you're on. All right, thank you.
Hello, nice to see you. So Redwood has to put this goal on the LCAP, and I'm going to share with you that it's incredibly frustrating and inappropriate in my eyes, and I'm going to tell you why. So the graduation rate, just for the first time last year, was counting our 5th year seniors. We have been graciously supported. Yes, if I have to. We have been graciously supported by the district to always have 5th year seniors. Yes, we have some 6-year sped students. But to not be able to count that in our graduation rate has always given us a faulty number. So for the first time last year, and our graduation rate was almost 70% because we were able to count our 5th year seniors. The problem that we have is that every time we have kind of a definition of what our grad rate is, it changes. It doesn't do that with the traditional schools. So we, for a long time, were able to count a 1-year cohort, which just means that they would take the kids that were with us for a year. But the traditional schools start from 9th grade because they're responsible for them for 4 years. But then they thought, oh, well, let's just make you responsible for them for 4 years, even though I don't even get them until they're in 11th, possibly 12th grade, because they're infinitely intelligent about these things. And I am really super frustrated, so I'm trying to be really nice. The thing also that I would like to share with you is that it doesn't matter what time seniors come to us. So it used to be a time where you had 90 days, and if they came to you within the 90 days before they were graduating, that they would go back to the traditional schools, but no longer. So a kid can come to me in April and I'm responsible for his graduation or her graduation, and it goes into our graduation rate, which is not equitable. The other thing is that I have a lot of 5th-year seniors. I'm not sure if you know, but they are first counted as dropouts because they didn't make it in 4 years. So things like that really impact this kind of message that we're giving everybody, that we're not meeting our graduation rates. You know, I had 4 seniors this year that had no credits, none. I can't graduate them in a year. I mean, one of the things that I think that we've done over the last 4 years is we have brought integrity to that program. I'm not going to speed up how quickly they can graduate because we are giving them a full program. You know, nobody else has asked that. Yes, we had a higher graduation rate because of AB 104 last year. I am going to ask that our seniors who are currently on the 180 that we agreed on be able to graduate under 180, because it's not ethical to make them increase their graduation rates just because they didn't finish in their 4 years. That's not coming now, right? But that's coming in the fall. But it's things like that. If they keep changing the numbers and the way they calculate my graduation rates, how are we ever really going to look and see how many kids are really graduating for us? I can't tell you specifically what our percentage is going to be this year, because I have to see how many kids didn't make it. Last year I had 32 5th-year seniors graduate. This year I'm about 15. We have about 85 graduating at this point, which is a great number, because one of the things that I was saying is we should not even call it grad rate. We should call it save rate, because we saved these guys. They were not going to graduate. They did not thrive in a traditional program, even though our traditional programs are really wonderful, amazing programs. It's not their thing, and that we have to acknowledge that. So I can set goals. I can do a risk analysis on really look at what's happening and why they're coming to us, but it doesn't matter if we're going to stay with a really ethical response to what's happening and integrity for these kids. So yes, we're going to do a risk, not a risk analysis, root cause analysis. Thank you. Risk analysis, same thing in my brain. We're going to
awesome work we're already doing.
That's right. But, you know, I can tell you, I mean, we did this already, you know, and they're requiring that we do this, but I still think it's just giving us a really bad name. And I think that that's not okay, you know, and I think that, yes, we'll show them why they come to us. I will show you why I have a very high Latinx population. I can show you who's not being met, needs aren't being met, but really it comes down to the individual student who needs a smaller learning environment. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And they're making it look like there's something wrong with that. So not okay with me, happy to do whatever I need to do. It's nothing about you guys. I want you to be educated and know and be able to speak to this because it's super important to me. And I hope that you can swing by graduation, even though they're all at the same time. The other thing I'd add is that we met with Kenyatta, and we're meeting with Kenyatta and might open 2 more CTE pathways when Tiffany gets back. We're talking about it, child development and going back to digital art. So that's what's coming. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you, Stephanie. And now we welcome your comments after a brief and unsolicited commercial that if on our next go around with the LCAP, when we start all over again, if there's any way to have fewer goals, this is not, believe it or not, a laundry list of everything that we do, but it's a lot of things that we do. And we certainly need a place where people can go and see what's going on in the Sequoia Union High School District. But it would be amazing to have a few high leverage goals that we think would really move the needle for kids. And tonight we heard some very compelling students talking about their experiences at their high school and what would it look like if we took some of our underperforming student groups and we had a goal around their experience with school environment and the ways that we were going to measure that. And maybe we, you know, if we looked at our long-term English learners and we had a a very actionable step for what we're going to do for those students and how we're going to measure it. Not that the rest doesn't matter, it certainly does. But just an idea, not mine, but I think a good one that might allow us to really check in every quarter on how are we doing on these high leverage items for our students.
No, I'm not. Trustee Nori has arrived online. I was catching him up as to where we are. If anyone has, and I see his comment, let's do public comment from attendees or anyone in the live audience first, and then we'll go to board member comments.
I have one public comment from Abby, a public comment card from Abby Corman.
Hi, good evening. I'm really excited by some of the updates to the LCAP. Also, Bonnie's ideas she just shared. In particular for these updates, I'm most excited about the work done in Goal 3 and Goal 7. I also really appreciated the effort to include stakeholders' concerns and to show the revisions made after this feedback. I'm glad to see so many plans in Goal 3 around MTSS, but I will repeat my new LCAP refrain. I ask that we make sure our funding is focused on student-facing services. Because while these goals are nice, and of course we need meetings to make sure the money is well spent and we need plans for implementation, if our work is still not directly reaching our students, they are only a theory. And sadly, we will see no change. We heard attendance, mental health, and direct student-facing services with bilingual liaisons are a big part of Goal 3. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but I can't help myself from wondering about the funding we're proposing for each goal. And I hope that we're robustly funding Goal 3 and MTSS, as this is one of our main underdeveloped areas in our district, understandably so, but now's the time. For Goal 7, I'd like to commend the district and our new superintendent of HR, assistant superintendent of HR, Todd Beal, on the revision around the recruitment and retention of teachers, including exit interviews, which we did not do before. The only way we can grow and retain teachers is by listening to those who've decided they can no longer stay, especially if they're leaving because of something that we have done. I appreciate the focus on the need to pay attention to implicit bias as well in our hiring. That's really something that we all need some practice on. And I hope to see named explicitly in other spaces moving forward. Also, for the record, in my notes, I want to share that I appreciate the community and I raised concerns 2 years ago about the need to focus on our newcomers, and I'm glad to see a goal focused on ELD in Goal 1.3 right now, and the increase in newcomer support, such as our center. So again, that shows the reflection and the revision that our team has done. Moving forward, I do ask that we look at our LCAP to see what direct services are going to our LTEL students. I won't even say that paragraph since Bonnie mentioned it, but I ask us to think bigger as we begin our next LCAP for the next 3 years and ask us why, instead of, it is important to support Redwood, but why do we have so many students who need to attend our continuation high school? Now time.
Thank you. We have one hand up in Zoom. We will hear next from Trisha Barr.
Hi, this is Trisha Barr, and I'm a parent on Menlo Atherton Site Council, and we are working to finalize our school site plan right now, which aligns to LCAP goals in the next week. Having the LCAP goals change at this time is less than ideal from a process perspective. I have a couple of points I wanted to make. I'm concerned with deleting rigor and attendance at the goal level in Goal 1 and burying it within the action items and then replacing it with innovative practices from distance learning. I think that if we want to fold in innovative practices from distance learning, that should be an action item, but not replacing rigor and attendance at the goal level. I thought that the actions under goals, the actions, and I think it was 3.5 for attendance were great. But again, I think that it still should be reinstated at the goal level. In action item 1.2, we talk about, we changed rigor to standards-based rigor, and I'm not sure what that means, and still am not clear on why we added that. And if it isn't clear, it makes it difficult for us to measure in school site plans. As Abby Corman mentioned, I also agree with the need for and the practice of conducting exit interviews for teachers who are leaving. And in goal 8, I appreciate the understanding more of the context there for Redwood and its work on graduation for our students who need more time. And also to Abby's point, I agree with, what do we need to do to help kids while they're in our 4-year comprehensive high schools so that we can better support them. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes public comment.
Okay, Safik?
Oh yeah, I'm happy to go first. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who made this possible. But I was actually reading an article the other day in EdSource from the person, I think his name was Michael Kirst, the person who came up with the LCFF funding formula. And he said that his biggest disappointment with the LCAP, or with the whole LCFF and LCAP, was that he felt that local school boards weren't involved enough in setting the goals, and this really was an opportunity for them to do that, and they didn't. And me personally, I know other people might have different opinions. I do think that is kind of true here, and I do think we are limited by what the state requirements of this document are. But I also do wonder, is there more? I think there always is going to be more that we could do in order to make, these goals be more associative to both the community and as a board level. But I do like a lot of the changes. I think I share some of the concerns about Trisha, especially regarding rigor, but I do like a lot of the goals that we have identified. I just, that quote from the guy really stood out to me, and I thought I'd bring that up. But what he said his biggest disappointment was just for something, for everyone else.
I missed what you said, that quote that you liked. You were talking.
Yeah, I pulled it up. I can read it for you. I thought it was very interesting, at least what his take on it was. So the question he got asked was what was your biggest disappointment about the LCAP and LCFF? And he said, I've been particularly disappointed in school boards' lack of deliberation on the LCAP. I thought that they should be really involved. This was their chance to get beyond formulaic budgets and the complexity of budgets to create a 3-year plan with clear priorities. Generally, my impression is not. We've been working to put money in the budget for educating parents, and that's a really hard push to get parents knowledgeable and then really influential over the budget. And the LCAP as an instrument needs even more work to do that. We've made some progress, but not enough. And I really do, that message kind of resonates with me at least. But I do think a lot of these goals are very good. I liked the goal about Redwood, and I do appreciate the concerns about how can we prevent kids from getting there where they need to go to a continuation school for the first place. And I do like seeing, how the goals have kind of progressed over time. And I do want to continue to emphasize, I do believe strongly that having a strong, rigorous program really does help everyone. So I would kind of echo Trisha's comments regarding that.
I guess I wanted to I appreciate what Vicky said around the standards being the rigor, and I want to learn a little bit more about that, because I do think having a definition of rigor is really important, so we kind of understand what we're looking for in academic success. The one thing Bonnie's gone. Okay, who am I talking? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I was like, okay, who am I talking to? Okay, so when we talked about developing the visual guide, I think one of the steps that's missing in there to kind of support as an action step is really training our community partners who are actually guiding students. If I think about certain communities, they're actually more embedded in their after school program that's doing college enrichment and tours and things of that sort. And they are guiding students what to do, and they're reinforcing the work that the school is doing as well, like looking on Canva and all these kinds of things. And I think training them on what our tools are and somehow making that that link a little bit stronger would be helpful. So I want to put that out there. The other thing is I really appreciate paying attention to the language that we are using, more strength-based language. And I forgot if it was Vicky or Bonnie, but that was interesting to me. The third thing is when I'm thinking about, I can't remember which slide it was, but when we are talking about, give me a minute and I'll come back to you all about that because I'll find it so I can make the appropriate comment. But the last one is the exit for Todd. When we're looking at exit interviews, it's not just for recruitment efforts, but for retention efforts. So for example, even if they stayed here 10 years and they decide to leave, what helped you to stay for 10 years? And what is the reasons for you leaving? I think asking both sides of the question would be helpful for us to understand what kept them here and then what led them to leave. And some of it may not be related to our hiring and retention practices, but I think having both sides of the coin would be helpful. And so I will look for the other one and then you can come back to me, Rich.
Yeah, so my comments are also about goal 1. I think I am also disappointed that the words attendance and engagement are not there. And then including building on innovative practices developed during distance learning. I remember when the board sort of put that sentence in, and I wasn't very excited about it at the time. And it was a different board, it was different people. And I wasn't excited because distance learning was not a very good experience for most kids. And I think also for the community. So I'm curious, and again, I didn't fight really hard when that got added in. It was really one board member that pushed for it. I can't remember who was there at the time. I don't know if you were there, Rich. So I'm surprised that that is sticking because it's not very meaningful to me. And I know we're not supposed to change things at this point, but it really is not very meaningful to me as a school board member. So who should?
So I'll just for deliberation purposes here, my understanding is that this is the third year of a 3-year LCAP and that we'll be having a new kind of a fresh start next year. So like the one that we review in a year, like that comment would be.
So I agree with.
So we got two. One is we're commenting on things that has to be approved very, very soon, but we also can make comments to kind of flag things to be looked at over the coming year.
So what about
there's
Tricia's
sort of
comment?
both of these things today, but we're not going to change this current document, but we can make comments that are relevant for what's coming in a year.
What about
So I have a quick question. When are we going to make the new goals for a new LCAP?
So we've not set a specific date topic. I'm hoping it will be in the January, February timeline, if not before, but around that time.
But I do want to talk about the innovative practices. I remember I know one person was on the prior board really wanted that there. And I know that when we think about environmentally during the crisis, no one wants to remember that, to be honest, because it was such a difficult thing. But sometimes if you lean into the hard things, there are things that we did learn during that time that could have been innovative. And one of those really was the one that stands out to me. And of course, my background is special education. So it's that collaborative piece where we can improve academics. And I think about that one piece and other people cringe, but that's okay. But I do think there are these pieces where we there are some things that we learned that did well, maybe not for all kids, but for some kids, right? And so I don't think we should shy away from that innovation just because it was a hard time in our educational experience. So I just wanted to say that, Carrie. So,
Okay, thank
yeah.
you. That's helpful. And the other thing, it just reminds me, there's this, kids have too much screen time, and that's the other thing that kind of hits me in the face about it. So I don't like it, but I guess it has to stick. And then Stephanie, thank you for speaking so passionately about your kids. I want to say I'm grateful to the district for allowing some kids to have that 5th year. That is an equity strategy, right? Because so many of our kids come to us very behind. And maybe we need to, this is an LCAP topic, but maybe we need to invite Tony Thurman and Josh Becker and Berman to Redwood, and you need to give that same speech to them, because I think Sacramento doesn't understand always how it works.
Okay, do you mind if I go back to I remember now, around the attendance piece, one of the things, is Jerry on this? I'm sorry, he's on this one, right? Okay, I know it's old stuff. It came out of the COVID, but we started talking about care teams as when we were reopening the school. I was on the reopen committee. It was some long name, but it was really the reopen committee. And I can't remember what the real name, it was complicated. Yeah, it does. It's just complicated. Okay, just keep going. I'm like, that's not the right name. But we talked about like this care team because we had so many students where their brains were just and their nervous systems were just on a high. And some of the home visiting came out of that, the strong home visiting strategies for some of our families. And so instead of this, just send you a letter, you're not attending school, we actually did a lot more outreach, which was one of the innovative practices that came out. But one of the ideas that got lost was the care team for some of our students that need a little bit more love and a little bit more reach out to. And so I'm wondering, as I'm thinking about so many things that have happened recently, is like, how do we really support our students that are really struggling to get to school? And thinking about that care team model versus an intervention model, but a really group of people that is a mix between school staff, outreach, and some of our community partners. But Jarrett may remember this, maybe it's just my old mind, but I'm not for sure if that fits in here. I'm not asking it to be put in, but just wanted to verbally speak to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate all the input being incorporated into the LCAP. I do have a couple of questions, not that we have to change anything, but something to keep in mind as we're thinking through our goals and LCAP for next year. I know that one of the best practices or the things that we might consider keeping is summer programs, right? But the focus, I think, has been more on credit recovery and maybe, making sure that students are ready for 9th grade as they're transitioning in if they're falling behind. But I wonder if there's opportunity to also help students get ahead or fill opportunity gaps as they transition. And I know there's collaboration right now between 8th grade and 9th grade teachers on some of the subject areas. But if you think about students' sense of belonging and having connection with trusted adults, a lot of that comes from things like fine arts and sports programs, but not all of the middle schools have the same opportunities. And there really should be some way to provide pre-frosh, if I'll call it that, right? An opportunity to do something in the summer to fill in a gap. If they're interested in band or orchestra, is there a way to get a group of them together? And it actually allows those pre-frosh to get to know each other through a common interest. So, right. Oh. Right. Oh, okay. Well, it comes to mind because, I was at I was at Celebrate the Music, right? And seeing my own fifth grader perform in the clarinet, but he's going to a K-8 school that doesn't have band or orchestra, right? And so how am I going to fill in those gaps? Because if in freshman year, they're looking at assessments to place them and all that kind of stuff, it ends up being kind of this lost opportunity because of the school he went to. And, you know, a lot of the collaborations, you know, I had a chance to MC at the Ralston and Carlmont combined choruses. I mean, that was awesome. But then what happens to other students that didn't go to the comprehensive middle school? Do they have to go outside to find those opportunities, or is there a way to have them slot in as absolute beginners in high school? So it's just kind of thinking through those types of opportunities so that students are not left out. And so there's different things you could do in the summer, and also, you know, thinking about math class, sometimes waiting until students are getting D's and F's is a bit late, right? So if they're passing the class, but their foundation is weak in some areas, is there a way to take advantage either of summer or after school to shore up those pieces so that they're not barely passing, but they're actually mastering the content? So it's really like taking some of these initiatives that we're already doing, but maybe broadening the scope of it.
Sorry, I just want to quickly add one of the things you said earlier about, you know, how can we do more outreach before students actually come to freshmen? That actually resonated a lot with us. And one of the things I'd like to share that happened very recently as a product of our 2x2, when we were discussing this with one of our feeder districts, Menlo Park, the trustees there also kind of agreed that this needed to be more of a focus and that more work could be done. I was really happy that one of the things that we came out of our 2x2 is we were able to organize with Carl an 8th grade football night at MA. So, you know, any 8th grader who's thinking of coming to MA next year, there is a football night where, you know, they can all come meet up and kind of start sharing in that high school spirit early. So I really do think that is something that's really important to ensure that our students have that sense of belonging even before they come to 9th grade.
And then I had two other things that I was going to bring up for the online tutoring piece. I am curious whether it's being utilized and whether it's effective. And if we're back in person, is online tutoring still necessary? I know that our local libraries, a lot of them offer online tutoring as well. So should we partner with the library instead of trying to do it ourselves and offering the online tutoring? So that's just a question from my end. And then for goal 7, really like the anti-bias training, because that's critical, right? Because you can eliminate a lot of good people if you're not careful in how you design the recruiting and interviewing process. But I was wondering, you know, now recently there's been so many high-tech layoffs and kind of the great resignation. Is there something we can do besides, you know, advocating to change teacher certification programs? But is there something we can do to enable mid-career people to transition into a teaching career? And especially for STEM classes, right? Because that's always been a shortage for STEM teachers. So what can we do? I mean, obviously we can advocate for change, but is there something else besides advocacy that we can do to enable that and make it more attractive? That's it. Thanks.
Okay, Shani, see any others? No. Zavik, anything else you want to say?
Oh, sorry. I promise I'll stop talking after this. But one of the things, the last thing you said actually resonated with us, because I don't know if we've done board member comments yet, but when we went to DC to lobby our elected officials, one of the things that CSBA really focused on.
We're going to get to board member comments at the end, topic. We
Yeah,
say that.
but just, I thought I'd quickly add, one of the things they focused on was, you know, the issue with pensions and Social Security. So for a lot of mid-career teachers, there's kind of a disincentive to switch careers because you lose access to your Social Security. So, you know, kind of focusing on that to try to get some of those state level policy initiatives changed so that people who do want to switch careers don't have to sacrifice their Social Security benefits to do so is something that I think our district could focus more on lobbying for.
Okay, I have a few comments or observations. Sophic, you brought up the timing of the goals, and Bonnie suggested reduction of the number of goals. I think we should just keep that all in mind as we get to our goal setting phase and then the next 4 or 6 months, but think about if we can consolidate or have a focus on concise number of goals. I know we have some of our feeder district trustees joining us tonight. And I'm looking forward to moving forward the data goal of getting our feeder districts to share data along with us sharing data with them and with the community college districts. I think if everybody shares data together, it'll make the whole system much, much better. So I'll just mention that while I see some of you are joining us this evening. I don't know that we're allowed to do this. I know that we must have the official rules regarding the graduation rates for road school, but if there were a potentially more meaningful district to find one that we also had, I know we'd always have to present the one by the required rules, but if there were one that would make sense given the realities of your school that we could use internally to how you'd want to represent things, I would support such an alternate. Like, you know, here's how the rules are. Say we have to do it, but if we do this, which makes sense for this program for these reasons, here's what it is. I don't know exactly what it would be, but we could have 2 measurements. I know the required one is always going to be what it is, but I'll just throw that out there. I like that we highlight the development of the SEL framework in the LCAP as something that's coming. And my last comment, we had some commenters talk about the word rigor. We received a letter about the word rigor. We've had other comments and letters in the past weeks about the word heterogeneous. I know that this year's LCAP is what it is and it's going forward, but I'm hoping that we have robust community discussion on rigor and heterogeneous so that a year from now, when we're approving the next LCAP, we all feel like those topics are something that teachers and parents all had a chance to comment and be heard on, and that we're have a thoughtful process between now and then for next year's LCAP. That's just something that I hope we're able to see. So that concludes our discussion about the LCAP proposed goals and action plans. And next is discussion of our regular board meeting schedule for the next academic year.
So what has been handed out right now is the proposed schedule for our regular meeting schedule for the 23-24 school year. It also includes some dates, like, so we have to remember we do have some regulatory meetings and state deadlines that we have to meet. So those are configured in here. We also had we did have SDTA, Edith Salvatore looked at this, and we also looked at making sure that we were not scheduling any meetings on any major religious holidays as well. So I think we've done a good job at that. We tried to keep the standard 2 meetings a month, except for when we have some short months. What looks a little different on this meeting schedule than previous meeting schedules is we have not pre-scheduled or made any suggestions for study sessions and or retreats. I know we have very busy calendars. My recommendation is if we wanted to add a study session, we could add that, but we would look at those dates separately or commit to one date in the fall, one day in the winter. And so forth. So this is up for discussion.
I support the idea of putting our regular meetings in place now and being more closer in time scheduling for board retreats, because it also could depend on when people are available. Like presenters are available and other things that we can't completely control. And so I support that approach and I'm comfortable with these dates.
My
Shawnee?
only concern is just, I know I have a work schedule like we all do, but giving enough time for the request off or time shifting of time, because that has been an issue in the past. And I just can't do last minute. Even sometime even a month is not a good notice for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, right now I'm in between jobs, so I'm really flexible. When I was working, like I need to know, especially if it's going to be during the workday, a lot of advance notice on like a retreat that's going to take all day, right? That's a big deal. And I was actually kind of wondering about the retreats. And if we're already going to do some sort of goal setting, shouldn't we at least align on a goal setting retreat to kick off the year? Because I think that date is pretty important, because we would want to make sure everyone's back from vacation, we have sufficient time, and finding something in the August time frame, I'm assuming, to go over kind of any finalization of goals or whatever it is that we want to do, or discussion of board norms. I don't know.
How about if we look to approve this regular meeting list at our next meeting? And we could then look at adding a date or two, not that it would be all of the future dates, but maybe we look at if there's a particular like goal setting retreat that we want to try to plan because it's going to be internal and not dependent on the schedule of an external presenter, like that one might potentially be. We could look to schedule a February or January goals around then, goal setting one, and note that we may have some others, but my main thing is get the regulars approved so that the people who attend the regular meetings, which is more than, a lot more people attend those, that schedule can be known, and then work on those other ones as we go forward. So I'd hope we can approve this and support in the near term, trying to put those other dates also on the calendar, but not delaying approving the regulars that a lot of other people might need to know. Go ahead, Carrie.
This is the first time in 17 years that I'm not going to change the calendar. That a board date lands on my birthday. It's so sad, even though I love board meetings.
What could be a better way to spend your birthday, Carrie?
And I always had an interest in like, are there some meetings that could be collapsed into a single meeting? Because I know every 2 weeks is actually a lot, not just for the board members, but for everyone who's prepping for the board meeting and then taking action on direction that we give at the board meeting. There's not a whole lot of time in between meetings. But that's just something where if you modified it to say even every 3 weeks, then you spend a week prepping for the meeting, a week trying to take action on direction, and then at least you have a week of rest in between where you're getting a lot of stuff done, or whatever you want to call it, right? Before you get into the next cycle. Otherwise, you're just going from meeting to meeting, which is a lot. And it's just something to consider, not necessarily to change it here, because I know something like that takes a little bit of forethought, but.
I would love, and I'm sure staff would also love, and these lovely attendees here, to only have one meeting a month or even one every 3 weeks. But as you can see from our presentations tonight, just having two, and they tend to go a minimum of a half hour to 45 minutes. And so as we've had some speakers before, we did have some adjustments in the governance calendar for this year. Things have been shifted around, different planning. And so like as we move into next year and we do preload those, next year would be a good test year so that we can monitor the presentations that are coming to the board, guest speakers we potentially have, and what time we are actually getting out. But there are some months that tend to be lighter. So September and October are really months where you could squeeze just one meeting in. They tend to be
they tend to be lighter, and it's better planning on staff side, making sure that we're, evenly placing items throughout the year.
I'll just also note, we did have our retreat and we had the list of things that we wanted to have meetings about. It was a pretty long list. So if we're going to have less meetings, we need to have a shorter list. So if we could do, but that would mean we'll have to cut deeper into the things that we, what we choose to try to move forward in terms of the different study sessions or other things you wanted to explore. So I think we could keep that as a possible idea, but I think we need to look at the amount of things that we want to address and then decide if it's going to be lighter. I would think that I wouldn't want to make that change right now, given all the goals and things we're currently talking about and the new LCAP coming in the coming year. I propose accepting this. I don't know, does anybody have any issue? Okay, so I guess would it come back on consent next meeting? Okay. Okay, so next we have 4 action items, starting with 16.1, approval of request for declaration of need for qualified educators.
All right, well, good evening again. This action item 16.1 is a requirement by the state of California when we're looking at potential emergency credentials. There's various categories that go into that, or internships that we may need to use to fill vacant positions. So what we have to do is take a look at previous data and determine what areas that we think we're going to need these areas be filled by internships or emergency credentials. It's always interesting because things change every year, but we have to plan ahead. So those are the numbers that you see. These are the same numbers we've had at least last year. I am pleased to report this year we had 0 that we had to put in there for emergency credentials. So it's positive. Again, I think it goes back to what we had talked about, trying to get our recruiting together and see if we can fill our spots. So again, this is just a state mandated requirement.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Motion to approve?
To the chair, we have a public comment.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Abby Corman.
I know this is really just something we have to do, but I'd like to take this opportunity. This is important for us as we go and recruit teachers, but I want to highlight it's important for us. We wouldn't be having these gaps if we were able to retain all of our teachers. Granted, of course, people leave this career and pursue other things. They also retire. That is just not all of the folks who've left our district. And so it's really important to have those exit interviews to find out why they left or are leaving, and then make changes so that we are retaining highly qualified teachers who are so passionate, and from those that I know who have left, who've really just burnt out. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for pointing out the comment. Motion to approve this action item. Thank you. Second? Do we need a roll call, do we, Laura? Or do we?
I'm sorry, who's second? Carrie.
Carrie did. Does this require a roll call? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Is
Next.
Suffolk still online though?
He is, but because he can't vote because I'll explain later.
Oh, okay.
Just for the action items. He can comment, but not for the action items.
Okay, got it.
6.2 is approval of authorization to purchase 5 school buses.
These are not just 5 regular school buses. These are 5 electric school buses. Now, I have been hearing the desire for us to purchase electric vehicles since 2019, when I started. And I must say that the feasibility of doing so, the reliability of owning an electric vehicle, such as an electric bus, has consistently gotten better with every year. But we have had a previous board member, Mr. Sarver. I do see you as an attendee with your hand already raised. As you know, he got an invite. Can we purchase this? So Darrell Wesley, our fabulous director of transportations, I said, go find money because these things are expensive. And so we have been able to secure several grants through the state and then through air pollution grants and so forth, along with money to also install the infrastructure and so forth. And he, in his expertise, Jarrell and his expertise, feel that the buses are finally up to a standard where we could actually purchase them and rely on them. So it is my pleasure tonight to put forth in front of you for approval 5 electric school buses.
Thank you, Crystal. And Alan, we very briefly considered putting this on consent, but figured we wanted you here to comment and glad that you're able to make it. So please recognize Alan Sarver and his public comment.
Oh, thank you for that. I hope that this is not at this point a controversial item, but it certainly is a momentous item. And Superintendent Leach, as you have mentioned, there has been a lot of intentionality and hard work and careful consideration over several years to get to this point. I am thrilled that this is indeed happening and going forward. I am extremely pleased at the kinds of things that you just mentioned, carefully ensuring that the technology is ready to be reliable, to be a productive part of our toolkit to move the district forward. The Measure A bond funds were very heavily focused on and utilized for environmentally sound construction work, including things like LEED certified buildings, and large implementation of solar panels and energy throughout. I'm glad that our basic infrastructure is in place in the bus yard to be supporting these electric buses now that they're here. And I am also extremely glad that our new bond will also be continuing the pathway forward to more environmentally sound investment and capital development in the district. I noted that the contract itself talked about 3 units of buses, and the agenda item is 5. So I hope as we reconcile those, we are going toward the maximum. I also hope that research is continuing to go on for more grants and more opportunity to continue expanding the fleet. As Trustee Thompson noted in some of our earlier discussions on the topic, it really is incumbent on public agencies to lead this transition across our society. And it's really important that school districts are among the leaders in converting to electric and doing it in a sound, responsible manner. All of that really seems to be in place now. I am very much looking forward to the arrival of those buses, to seeing them in full utilization, to seeing our students being transported in a safer, healthier, greener manner, and moving our entire community forward into the future. Thank you very much for bringing us to this point.
Thank you for your advocacy all the way along the way, Alan, and for being here tonight for your comments. Does any board member have any other comments they'd like to make about this contract?
We have one public comment
Okay.
from Abby Corman.
Sorry. This week at MA is Awareness Week. And today I'm wearing green because it is Environmental Awareness Day. We had AP Environmental Studies students this today at lunch, giving presentations on what that could look like, what that means, where we're at in our world right now, and changes they can make moving forward. And so it's exciting to see our district matching our youth's enthusiasm. I know we had a club writing regularly to the board around environmental awareness, and so I'm glad to see this. The reason I'm commenting is this is a good placeholder, reminds me of my comments from the last board meeting around our transportation plan. In my classes, I've shared with you how students walk an hour from EPA to get to school in the rain. They pay for Ubers to get to public school. And just recently, just last week, one of my students was riding his bike to school, which is great that MA provides free bikes to all students who need it. But he got pushed off his bike as he was riding to school, and they stole his bike. And then we had the incident last week at the public bus stop with the police. And so transportation is just really heavy on my heart, my students getting to school. And so I just wonder about our buses and if there is a way to support our students in not just going on field trips, not just our special education students who need specific buses, but in helping our students get to school. I wonder how much of a role that has to do with our absentee rate. Thanks.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve item 16.2? Carrie moves. Do I have a second? Shawnee seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. Next, we have item 16.3, adopting resolutions 1751. Intention to levy annual assessment for fiscal year 23-24, preliminary approving engineer's report and providing for notice of hearing for the SUHSD Maintenance Assessment District.
So this is step 2 in a 3-step process, so that we are able to collect this tax that our community so approved for us several years back. So step 1, on February 15th, the Board of Trustees adopted Resolution 1744 in order to enter in to contract with SCI Consulting Group to work on the engineering report. Today is the adoption of Resolution 1751. As President Ginn had stated, the intention to levy the assessment. On June 7th, the board will hold a public hearing and then take action on continuing to collect the maintenance assessment district money for 23-24. Upon this approval, the district is, it is anticipated that the district will receive just under $950,000 in revenue from the maintenance assessment district money. This partially offsets our general fund expenditures used to the upkeep of our district's outdoor and really like our community areas, since many of our schools are used by the community.
Okay, thank you. Does any board member have any questions about this? Motion to approve? Shawnee's moves.
Second.
Amy seconds. Roll call vote.
Trustee Koo,
Aye.
Trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson,
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 4 with 1 abstain. Or absent, 1 absent. Thank you.
Okay, next is adoption of resolution 1750 to certify all proceedings in the November 8, 2022 general obligation bond election measure W. Does any board member have any questions or comments, or do you want to say something, Kristen?
Yes, I would like to say something.
Okay,
Adoption of these resolutions are my favorite resolutions to adopt, I must especially this one. There was so much community support for the passage of Measure W, which was passed back this past November 2022. And the commitment that our community has for putting our students and our staff in fabulous buildings on fabulous sites with air conditioning, upgraded energy efficiency, and really just bringing our classrooms into a state that is larger. A lot of them are undersized. And this was something that we were exploring back in 2020. And that didn't happen for a variety of reasons. And so our first opportunity to put a bond on the ballot was in 2022. So it is my absolute pleasure to bring before the board an adoption of this resolution to certify the proceedings from the November 8th general obligation bond election for our Measure W.
Any board member comments? I'll just comment that maintaining the large amount of campuses that we have is an ongoing effort. There was very large community support. There was a small number of naysayers in the community who, in my opinion, don't recognize that it requires continual investment to keep facilities in good condition. Every 10 years, you work on 10 to 20% of your facilities. It's going to take several decades before you get back around to everything. And it's a continual process. When we look at the other institutions around us, they're always also continually, needing to work on their facilities. It's not something that you just put in place once and leave for decades and decades without improvement. So I appreciate the voters supporting us on this and all the people who helped with the bond campaign. And it's my pleasure to approve this tonight. So I need a new motion to approve. Shawnice,
I second.
Amy seconds. No roll call required. All in favor? Aye.
We should roll call on
okay.
resolutions, yes.
Okay, roll call vote.
Trustee Koo,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
Vice President Stevenson.
Yes.
President Ginn.
Yes.
Motion adopted, 4 yeas and 1 absent.
Okay, so now comes the item number 9, which we moved to this point, and I'm just going to comment, it is 9:31. We haven't gone past 10 since I've been president. I don't want tonight to be the first night, so let's see if we can do our comments in 29 minutes or less. Who would like to go first?
I wanted to let you all know that I visited Clifford Elementary School, the middle school, just to kind of get an idea of how our kids are being prepared coming from the elementary district is something that is a goal of mine for next year, but it started this year. And it was pretty cool over at Clifford. It's a Title I school. It's more diverse than it's ever been in the last 5 years. If you all don't know where it is just above Alameda, De La Pogas, in Redwood City. And I went there doing an approach with the National Urban Alliance, and they're going to be becoming a demonstration site, and their teachers are training other teachers. And there really is about inclusion and support and trauma-informed practices, but also really building confidence in kids. And was able to go to their class, and their teacher told them that I was a board member, and what they want me to know about how Redwood City was preparing them for high school. So I want to share what they said. And they said that they're teaching us standards. I was like, okay, yeah, I've been talking to a teacher. Make sure we understand in different ways, show us what to start doing in high school, lots of learning activities, and they're giving the kids the tools for learning. And then I said, I'm going to ask you guys some questions. What high school is in Sequoia Union High School District? And they were able to name it. So I thought it was quite interesting. And then one of the kids said, we just like to thank you guys for buying our computers. So I was like, oh, they get it in elementary. And so it was just a really good experience for me to see where the kids are coming from and kind of what Redwood City is doing to prepare our kids. And my hope is to do that with Ravenswood next year because hopefully their building will be open. They're one middle school. So just, I think it was eye-opening to kind of see the pipeline a little bit more, to widen our view. I know we get a lot of feedback about what we're not doing, but I think it's also not about what we're doing, but what we're doing in partnership with our schools, because it is a relay race to educate kids, not, just one district. The other thing is that Trustee Nora and I went to the peaceful protest. I was very impressed with the young people, and just their ability to communicate kind of what's happening with them and their own response, and very similar to today, very respectful, and was very proud that all of our cabinet people were there, and 2 board members, a mayor of a city, community members were there to support as well as guide the students. And so part of responding to people's needs, sometimes you need to do something. And so as a parent who had a child who did a protest, what I was most concerned about is kids being exploited or not being heard. So I think that's kind of like my sticking point, but I felt like all the AVPs were there, and so I know we can't comment too much, but I just want to say we hear the students. And then I went to the Ravenswood Education Foundation meeting and listened to their kids talk about what they're learning in school. It was able, they really displayed their kids and all the good stuff. Even the MC was a little kid reading her piece of paper. So it was really good. And then having lots of conversations with teachers and staff and counselors. I think after Friday, what I'm more worried about and concerned about is our teachers. Are they getting the support that they need? Not saying we're not giving support, but like it may take some ongoing conversation and supports and understanding for individuals. And then on the last note, I just came back from my niece's graduation from Alabama State, which is historically Black college in Montgomery. Montgomery is also the place where there is a museum called the Legacy Museum. If you ever read a book or went to the movie Just Mercy, about the pipeline from enslavement to prison, and kind of like the historical and the ties to that. We went to their memorial site with my kids, my husband, and all of their his family, our family. And it was a sobering moment because you're not allowed to take too many pictures because it is a memorial. And one of the things I did was I went to, it's very different than some of the other museums, but it did focus on lynching, which was just recently taken off the books of law, that lynching was legal up until 2022. And that I went to the memorial of over 800 counties had over 4,000 lynchings of enslaved Africans and Black Americans. And I found they have these big tombs, not tombs, but metal things with the names of the people who were lynched per county, and was able to find 3 of my family members' counties in which they live. At least for each of those counties, found people who were lynched. So that actually made it more relevant to me. And so it wasn't over there, back there. It's like, oh, that's the county my grandmother's from, or my husband's mom is from, or even the state that I'm from. And so when I think about kind of the pain and stuff that Black folks are dealing with, it's actually the trauma that's been passed down over and over. When I hear Kira, who spoke earlier on the public comment of like, not Kira, but Taja saying it was Ravenswood High School. And so all these practices keep going. And so unfortunately, I keep saying this, that if we don't do some placemaking and name it, we're just being rude, right? Of walking over the tombstones. And because they don't have a headstone, they don't have a placement. And so I can't talk about that incident as it's confidential, but it rings for me just how deep the pain is, not just about Friday. I think the pain is deeper about generational and how do we really acknowledge the harm that maybe it wasn't our board. Maybe it was in board 2 years ago, 20 years ago, but maybe it was a board who made some critical decisions and didn't realize the harm on certain communities. So I just want to put that out there. I gave you guys some really great cards. Hopefully you keep them. There's some artwork in East Palo Alto with the East Palo Alto Archives. Education will be in there. So Ravenswood High School will be a part of that conversation. So there's a lot of artwork and murals that are going to be happening. So I gave you guys the cards. So thank you.
Okay, Sophic.
Yeah, thank you, President, for letting me go next. I just had 2 things I wanted to share. So a couple weeks ago, I and a couple other board members were able to go to the Progress Seminar in Santa Rosa, and that was a really great opportunity to meet other elected officials in San Mateo County from the community college board, cities, some of our feeder districts, the County Board of Education, and really, network and also plan what more better things we could do to serve our residents. So that was a lot of fun. And then me and Trustee Ginn were also able to go to DC through the CSBA conference along with another contingent of school board members from San Mateo County to lobby at the federal level for some key policies that really would benefit our district. So a couple of them I'd share are, one of the big things regarding special ed is that under the IDEA, the federal government promised to fund 40% of the per student cost, and that's something they've never gotten over 12% of funding. So we really reiterated to our Congress representatives, specifically Kevin Mullen and Anna Eshoo, the importance of funding special ed and how the massive amounts of settlements that we have really hurts all of our students in our district and takes a lot of money away from our general fund. Like I shared before, we were able to also talk about the importance of making some regulatory changes regarding pensions and Social Security, so we really can recruit and retain high quality teachers and also mid-career teachers. And one of the other things that I was very interested in advocating for was petitioning Congress to ask the Department of Education to change its school certification status or something along those lines, because especially for alternative schools, which is a huge problem in California, because they're judged the same way that comprehensive high schools are, and that can really make them look bad in an unfair light because they're not serving nearly the same population as our traditional schools serve. So advocating for them to have their own set of standards so they're not held to an unfair burden was something really cool. But overall, that trip was a lot of fun. We were able to meet a lot of cool people. And yeah, I think we really were able to communicate to lawmakers in the federal level the importance of the work we do and also how what they can do to help make sure that we truly are achieving our goal of serving all students. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Okay, thank you, Sophic. Go ahead, Carrie.
I have a lot. I'll talk really fast. I'm worried that staff is tired. I'm sorry I have so much. I've just been out and about in the community quite a bit in the last couple of weeks. So Superintendent Leach and I met at Redwood with Raphael, the executive director of Redwood City Together, and brainstormed ideas of a partnership. It was really exciting. So I think a partnership is going to happen, which I thought would make you really happy. Okay, I'm trying to talk fast. Okay. Amy and I attended the Health Connect fundraiser in San Jose. If you're not familiar with Health Connect, they do the sex ed for our district. I thought it was a very inspirational fundraiser. One of the staff members talked about his experience growing up gay. And I think what was most insightful is his mom sharing her initial reaction and coming to acceptance. So I'm very proud of our partnership with that organization. I went and visited Sequoia High School at the urging of teachers to get into the classes at that school that are detract. So I visited 3 classes. A teacher, Nicole Vaughn, put quite a bit of time in to organize my tour. And she also gave me information on what I would be seeing in the classrooms. After that tour, I talked to a teacher at Sequoia who spends a lot of time mentoring new teachers. And in my discussion with him, he reminded me of a letter that a teacher had sent me back in March. And I usually spend a lot of time reading letters that come from teachers, and then I always respond. I vaguely remembered this letter, but it must have come at a time when I was really busy. I didn't even respond to her. So I'm so grateful that this teacher reminded me of this letter. And it's a personal letter from a teacher. It only came to me, and it is on the topic of D-track classrooms. So I wanted to share it with all of you. I also, around the same subject of D-track classes, as we kind of, reflect on what is happening. I want to say that I think one of the problems with this conversation is all board members, I don't believe, are fully brought along. We did talk about it occasionally in board member meetings, but we didn't talk about it in like our conversations with the superintendents in the past. And then we didn't fully talk about it. So, but when the superintendent of Ravenswood came and spoke to us, and she spoke so passionately about her kids and how her kids are more than a test score. And also Jenny Bloom, I'm glad she's listening right now. She gave us a beautiful quote that night. And I don't know if you guys remember her quote. It really resonated with me. And so I asked Jenny for the quote. So I want to pass this out to you. And Sophic, I will share these things with you tomorrow since you're not here. I also went to the Acknowledge Alliance fundraiser. If you don't know about Acknowledge Alliance, they are one of our mental health partners, and they work with our most, I'm going to start saying opportunity kids, because that's what the term Raphael uses. So they help kids transition who have been expelled. They help kids who transition out of incarceration back to our comprehensive high schools. It was so moving. And so next year we all need to go to this. They did a panel on nurturing resilience in the face of trauma. They had a professor from Stanford who spoke, as well as their staff. And one of the staff members, when she introduced the panel, started to cry. I went to her afterwards, and she had a hard time not crying. And I said, "Are you crying because you know the stories of our kids?" And she said, "Yes." So I won't pass that out. Last night, I watched the parent education series talk on teen misconceptions on cannabis and vaping. It was really powerful. The speaker was a professor of adolescent medicine from Stanford. She's the woman she worked, I think, with Trisha Barr on the vaping advocacy. It was really strong and reignited my concern that we're not doing enough about educating our kids with drugs. And that could be a possibility of a partnership with our partner districts. Like, I have wanted to know every Belmont Redwood Shores, 2+2. I've wanted an agenda item of like, what are they doing as far as drug education? And it's never been on the agenda. And I think I've been asking for 2 years. And I don't know what our other feeder districts are doing. And I think there's such an opportunity to understand what they are doing and maybe coming together as a community to do more. And I think there's an urgent need to do more because there is a drug problem in our community. Kids are not well informed, and there's even a bigger problem at the college level with drinking and drugs. I went to EPAA I was a judge for the presentations that the kids do. So it was good to be on that campus, and I was really excited about the kids' presentations. And the last thing I'll share is I had my very last day of mentoring a kid at Tide. So I have been mentoring students in our districts for 8 years. So it's been 8 different kids. My second time at Tide last year, it was online. So that was hard. It was hard to connect. I had 2 boys. It was really hard to connect on Zoom. This year, it's much easier to be doing it in person. But I wanted to share that there were other mentors from throughout our community spending time with kids. And there was just such a buzz in the air of that last session. And so I'm really grateful to the people in the community that take the time to get to know our kids and get them excited about careers and get them excited about college and other things. So sorry I had so much, but all this stuff really excites me, and I love the great work our district does. Thanks.
I did want to recognize that this is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Heritage Month. They've added NH to the AAPI, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's 2 very important things going on. And I'm proud that SUHSD is now a district member of the API School Board Members Association. And I think there's opportunities to be more involved with the other school board associations of different ethnic groups. But of course, someone from our board actually needs to be committed to doing something with it. So we can kind of tag team, hopefully. But I am excited that we've submitted some workshop proposals for the annual education conference. So hopefully they'll get accepted. But last year's workshop, From Anti-Asian Hate to Solidarity, How Schools Can Combat Racial Bullying Through Ethnic Studies, had such positive feedback. We've decided to just resubmit the same workshop because the conference this year is going to be in San Francisco, whereas last year it was San Diego. So potentially you get a different group of people attending that particular workshop who were maybe not able to go to the San Diego conference. And then we're just going to refresh it with the latest information if we have any updated information. But that's an easier one because we're going to bring back a lot of the same speakers. And then the second one we did is something we've been talking about because of, the AANHPI sometimes not being noticed when it comes to mental health issues or not taking full advantage of supports that are in place, could be stigma or anything else. We came up with a proposal for From Surviving to Thriving, Family Engagement Strategies to Support AANHPI Students in Times of Turmoil. And so it's a really long name, but the intent is that there may be students who need supports, but if the families don't trust the system or they think that it's bringing shame or, whatever else is going on, how do districts build connections with families so that they trust the district and the people that are working with their students and accept the supports being offered, or they're willing to be open and speak frankly about what's happening with their kids. So I think that's actually very important and something that is very relevant to both the AANHPI Heritage Month as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. And then I did mention earlier the School Force Celebrate the Music Festival. Thank you to Trustee Stevenson and myself. We were MCs there. It was interesting, when I was watching the Carl Mott Strings Bonanza performance, which was right before the combined chorus, the director had mentioned some highlights, and one included going on a tour in New York City. And they asked the students what was their best memories of that trip. And you'd think it was actually getting up on stage and performing, right? And it wasn't. Like their best memories was the meals that they spent together. And there's actually 2 sections of orchestra at Carl Mott. And so the kids in the different sections never saw each other, even though they had that common interest of music. So then for the first time during this tour, they were able to meet the kids from the other section over meals. And that was actually what they remembered the most, is that they met some new people that had a common interest. So that just really showed to me the importance of relationships, and creating those relationships through common experiences is so important. And then lastly, I'll finish with a funny story because Teacher Appreciation Week. Definitely thank all the teachers for all the great work that they're doing. But I do still have a kid in elementary school, so one of the things we do is do things like volunteer for yard duty. So I volunteered for yard duty on Monday at Sandpiper and got duped by 5th graders. It was like worse than Who's Smarter Than a 5th Grader. But I was out monitoring the basketball courts and the kids were all playing. And then several girls came up to me and said, "These boys are 5th graders." And I said, "Okay, they're probably here because the other basketball courts are full. This is supposed to be the 2nd and 3rd grade area. They're not supposed to be here. They're supposed to stay on the other side." I don't know. I don't normally do yard duty, so how am I supposed to know? So they took total advantage of me. So I spoke with the boys, and one of them even grinned sheepishly and said, "Hey, I'm in second grade." And then they walked away. But I just thought, like, I can't believe I got duped by fifth graders.
You could sub in some of our classes here if you'd like them.
She wants to go to bed.
Well, the comments I was going to make was the same two events that Suffolk attended, so I won't add back on, but they were good networking events. I think hopefully we'll all participate in those sort of things again in the coming year. At this time, prior to 10 p.m. barely, motion to adjourn.
Good.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Let's keep going. No, okay. Motion, I move.
All in favor of adjournment? All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.